Imagine a heavy ancient oak table, its surface worn smooth by the passage of countless hands and the quiet weight of centuries. Resting in the centre of this vast wooden plane is a single oil lamp, its small flame trembling gently, casting a warm, comforting amber light. Dust motes, tiny and weightless, drift slowly through the illuminated air, spinning in a quiet, eternal dance before settling softly onto a sprawling expanse of crackling, cream-coloured parchment. The edges of the paper curl slightly inward, holding the memories of 1,000 rolling oceans and forgotten continents. Listen to the profound silence of this room. It is the silence of an archive long after the heavy wooden doors have been locked, a sanctuary of stillness where time itself seems to slow down, to breathe, to rest. The air here is thick with the scent of dried leather bindings, of ancient linen, of crushed mineral pigments, and the faint, sweet memory of beeswax. You're safe here. You're entirely alone in the best possible way, enveloped in a quiet space built entirely of history, mystery, and profound peace. As we stand over this magnificent table, looking down at the curling ink and the faded lines that once guided ancient travellers across unknown worlds, I want you to make a promise to yourself. You do not need to try to remember any of this. There is no test waiting for you, no pressure to memorise the names of distant seas or the coordinates of vanished cities. Let your mind soften, like wax melting under a gentle flame. Let the ideas, the images, and the stories drift through your consciousness like leaves carried on a slow, winding river. You're merely a passenger on a quiet boat, watching the shore glide by. Whatever thoughts decide to stay, let them stay. Whatever details fade into the mist, let them fade. The only thing that matters right now is the warmth of the light, the rhythm of your own breathing, and the steady, calming unfolding of the world before you. Take a slow, deep breath in, filling your lungs with the quiet air of this ancient room, and release it slowly, letting your shoulders drop. As the shadows stretch and flicker across the table, we gently move the lamp toward the very first corner of human memory, illuminating a time when the world was vast, mysterious, and waiting to be understood. The golden light of our lamp first falls not upon delicate paper, but upon a small, solid tablet of baked earth. It is clay, pulled dark and wet from the slow-moving banks of the Euphrates River, shaped by careful hands over 2.5 millennia ago. This is the Imago Mundi, the Babylonian map of the world, resting heavy and cool in the palm of history. The maker of this map did not have satellites or compasses. They had only the stars above, the earth below, and a sharp reed stylus. They pressed delicate wedge-shaped marks into the soft clay, creating a perfect protective circle that represents the cosmic ocean, the bitter water that they believed surrounded all known existence. Right in the very centre, anchoring the entire universe, they drew their own home, Babylon, a grounding point in an endless sea. The Euphrates River flows steadily through the middle, a lifeline carved in miniature. Imagine the profound sense of peace the mapmaker must have felt, pressing their reality into the mud, organising the vast and terrifying cosmos into something small enough to hold, to bake in the sun, to keep forever. It is a reminder that no matter how unimaginably large the universe becomes, we always begin by finding our own centre, our own quiet point of origin. Leaving the baked clay behind, the light of our lamp drifts gently over to a different texture entirely, something fragile, woven, and whispering of dry desert winds. It is a long, narrow scroll of papyrus, assembled from the tall green reeds that swayed along the edges of the ancient Nile. This is the Turin Papyrus map, drawn over 3,000 years ago in the Golden Kingdom of ancient Egypt. But this map does not show the stars, nor does it trace the borders of empires. Instead, it looks deeply and quietly into the earth itself. Drawn with delicate brushes dipped in black and red ink, It is the world's oldest surviving geological map. It traces the twisting, winding paths of dry riverbeds, cutting through the harsh and silent mountains of the eastern desert. It carefully marks the locations of dark, heavy blocks of stone used for carving eternal statues, and, most wondrously, it points the way to the hidden gold mines of the pharaohs. The mapmaker used different shades of pigment, ground from the very rocks they were charting, to represent the shifting colours of the desert sand and stone. Looking at these red and black lines, you can almost feel the dry heat of the ancient sun, the gritty texture of the desert floor, and the quiet, persistent human desire to understand the hidden treasures sleeping beneath the surface of the earth. As we gently roll up the fragile papyrus, our minds travel north, across the shimmering dark blue expanse of the Mediterranean Sea to the sun-bleached stones of ancient Greece. Here, the map is not something we can touch, but something we can only envision, born from the mind of a philosopher named Anaximander. Close your eyes for a moment and picture the Earth not as a flat drawing, and not as a perfect sphere, but as a massive floating stone cylinder, suspended in the infinite star-studded void of space. This was Anaximander's profound vision, the very first Greek map of the world. He imagined humanity living on the flat top surface of this grand floating drum. What makes this idea so beautifully calming is the pure leap of imagination it required. He stepped entirely outside of his own body, leaving the ground behind, and floated his mind into the quiet darkness of the cosmos to look back at his home. He believed the Earth needed no pillars, no giant turtles, no chains to hold it up. It rested in perfect, silent equilibrium, surrounded by an equal distance of nothingness on all sides. It is a thought that invites deep rest, the idea that our world, and by extension ourselves, is perfectly balanced in the quiet dark, held exactly where it needs to be by the gentle forces of the universe, requiring nothing more than to simply exist. That same deep, quiet curiosity eventually led another thinker, Eratosthenes, to map the world not with clay or wood, but with nothing more than shadows and the slow passage of time. He served as the chief librarian at the Great Library of Alexandria, a place where the air must have smelled perpetually of drying ink and accumulated wisdom. He heard a simple, beautiful rumour that in a city far to the south, on the longest day of the year, at the exact stroke of noon, the sun shone directly down to the very bottom of a deep water well, casting absolutely no shadow. The sun, for a brief moment, looked straight into the eye of the earth. From this single, silent observation, Eratosthenes placed a vertical rod in the ground in his own city, measured the slight angle of its shadow at that exact same moment, and through the quiet harmony of geometry, calculated the circumference of the entire Earth. He mapped the size of our globe using only a stick, a shadow, and the brilliant quiet light of the midday sun. There is something profoundly soothing in this realization, that the grandest, most overwhelming mysteries of our existence can sometimes be unraveled by simply pausing, standing perfectly still, and observing the gentle, shifting play of light and dark upon the ground. Within that same quiet library, generations later, a man named Ptolemy decided that the vast, sprawling, chaotic world needed a framework of peace and order. He took the curved, overwhelming shape of the earth and imagined casting a delicate, invisible net over it. This was his great gift to cartography, the perfection of latitude and longitude. He laid down a precise mathematical grid over the empty parchment, drawing perfectly straight horizontal and vertical lines that intersected in quiet, absolute harmony. Before any landmass was drawn, before any mountain was shaded, there was the grid. It was a way of taming the unknown, of creating a safe, predictable structure where every single point on the globe, no matter how remote, how wild, or how lonely, had an exact mathematical home. By assigning numbers to these lines, Ptolemy ensured that no one ever had to be truly lost. There is a deep psychological comfort in this ancient mathematical net. It suggests that amidst the turbulent oceans and the endless shifting sands, there is a quiet, invisible order holding everything together, a system of invisible threads that connects the furthest, most isolated island safely back to the heart of the known world. Yet, not all ancient maps cared for such perfect mathematical geometry. As our lamp glides further across the wooden table, its light catches the edge of a map that seems to stretch on forever, unrolling into a long, incredibly narrow ribbon of parchment. This is based on a masterwork of the Roman Empire, known to us now through a surviving copy called the Tabula Peutingeriana. To look at it is to see a world completely distorted, squashed flat and stretched horizontally until the majestic Mediterranean Sea looks like a thin blue river. But the Romans did not care for astronomical perfection. They cared about the rhythm of walking, the sound of marching boots, and the steady rhythmic turning of wagon wheels. This was a traveller's map. It did not matter what the actual shape of the land was. What mattered was the road. The parchment is covered in red lines depicting the vast network of Roman highways, peppered with small, carefully drawn icons of way stations, resting places, and thermal bathhouses. It maps the world not in miles but in days of travel and nights of rest. It is a beautiful reminder that sometimes the true shape of the world is defined entirely by our journey through it, by the spaces between one safe, warm resting place and the next, turning the entire empire into a long, quiet walk home. If we close our eyes to the dusty roads of Rome and listen closely, we can hear the sound of a different kind of journey, the rhythmic, hypnotic crashing of ocean waves. Far out in the vast, deep blue expanse of the Pacific Ocean, ancient Polynesian navigators created maps unlike anything found in the libraries of Europe. They did not use papyrus, parchment, or clay. They used the earth itself. They crafted delicate, beautiful frames from the dried, slender ribs of palm fronds, lashing them together with soft coconut fibre. Along these curved and straight wooden sticks, they tied small, smooth cowrie shells. But these maps did not show the shape of the land. The sticks represented the invisible, swelling energy of the ocean currents, the way the deep water rolled, bounced, and refracted off hidden islands. The shells were the islands interrupting the flow. A navigator would not look at this map while sailing. They would study it on the soft sand of the beach, memorizing the patterns of the waves, internalizing the geometry of the water. Once at sea, they would lay down in the bottom of their wooden canoe, close their eyes, and feel the map through the gentle rocking of the hull. They mapped the world through feeling, through intuition, riding the slow, rhythmic breath of the ocean itself. From the gentle, swaying surface of the Pacific, our mind drifts back to solid ground, high into the crisp, cool, and silent air of the Alpine mountains in northern Italy. Here, the map is immovable, eternally anchored to the earth. Carved into the flat surface of a massive dark rock face is the Bedolina petroglyph, created slowly over centuries by ancient hands gripping stone tools. It is a magnificent, sprawling aerial view of a prehistoric community. The stone is covered in deeply pecked geometric squares and rectangles, representing carefully tended fields and pastures. Connecting them are winding, deeply grooved lines showing paths, streams, and the locations of small, simple houses. As the sun sets over the Alps, the fading light casts long shadows into these ancient grooves, bringing the map to life. It is not a map for travel or for navigation. It is a map of belonging. The act of carving it into the bedrock was a way of laying claim to a place, of declaring, silently to the sky and the mountains, "We are here and this is our home." The sheer physical effort required to chip away the rock speaks to a profound love for the land, creating a permanent sleeping memory of a quiet life lived thousands of years ago. Sometimes, the most vivid ancient maps were not drawn, carved, or woven at all. They were spoken. They were made entirely of words, built softly in the theatre of the mind. the Greek geographer Strabo realized that the world was too vast, too textured, and too full of life to be captured simply by lines on parchment. He mapped the known world through slow, methodical storytelling in his massive work, the Geographica. He described the temperature of the air, the taste of the spring water, the strange customs of distant tribes, and the smells of the thick pine forests. His map was a tapestry of adjectives and memories. He charted distances not with cold numbers, but by the length of time a ship might take to sail before a favourable wind, or the number of sunsets a merchant might see while crossing a desert. When you listen to a map made of words, your own imagination becomes the cartographer. You paint the mountains with your own mind, you fill the rivers with your own water. Strabo understood that the world is primarily a narrative, a long, quiet story passed from traveller to traveller, whispered over warm hearth fires in the deep silence of the night. As we finally reach the edges of these ancient maps, the solid lines begin to soften, and the precise measurements slowly melt away into pure imagination. This is the realm of terra incognita, the unknown land. Ancient map makers did not view the empty edges of their parchment as terrifying voids. Rather, they filled them with a gentle, dreamlike mythology. Where knowledge faded, art and wonder took over. They painted magnificent, swirling creatures resting in the deep oceans, and they drew the winds not as invisible forces but as calm, softly blowing faces with full cheeks, resting in the clouds and exhaling the breezes that push ships safely home. The edges of the maps blur into the mists of the sleep world, a place where geography surrenders to dreams. It is an invitation to let go of the need for certainty, to accept that there will always be parts of the world and parts of ourselves that remain uncharted and mysterious. As the golden light of our lamp finally begins to dim, casting longer, softer shadows across the wooden table, we can allow our own minds to drift off the edge of the known parchment, floating gently into that beautiful, quiet mist of the unknown, safe, secure, and completely at peace. Out of that beautiful, gentle mist of the unknown, imagine a new texture slowly forming under your fingertips. It is not the coarse, shifting grain of sand, nor the brittle edge of dried papyrus, but the smooth, heavy, gliding touch of ancient silk. In the early years of the 15th century, cartographers in Korea wove a vision of the world known as the Kangnido map. They took the delicate threads of local knowledge, spun them together with charts brought by travellers from the distant Islamic world, and blended them seamlessly with the meticulous imperial records of China. Painted on this vast, shimmering expanse of silk, the earth is depicted with an elegant, almost breathtaking disproportion. Korea itself is drawn massive, a proud, towering anchor on the right side of the fabric, while the entirety of Europe and Africa are depicted as tiny, distant echoes on the far left edge. Yet, what is so deeply moving about the Kangnido is that it shows an incredibly accurate, pointed shape of the African continent more than 80 years before European explorers would slowly sail around its southern cape. It is a peaceful reminder that human knowledge has never belonged to just one people or one isolated place. It is a shared, continuous tapestry. Information flowed softly across vast mountains and silent deserts, whispered from merchant to monk, from sailor to scholar, gradually weaving an ever clearer picture of the earth upon a beautiful canvas of painted silk. As we let the soft fabric slip away, the mind can easily drift toward the brilliant colours that brought these ancient geographies to life. When the meticulous mathematical grids of the Greek scholar Ptolemy were rediscovered and redrawn during the Renaissance, the master artisans did not just use plain ink. They wanted the oceans of the world to reflect the profound, calming depth of the real sea. To achieve this, they turned to a rare stone pulled from the remote high-altitude mines of Central Asia, lapis lazuli. Monks and painters would take this dark, star-speckled blue rock and rhythmically, patiently grind it down in heavy stone mortars until it became a fine, dusty powder. Mixed with clear water and the gentle binder of egg yolk or tree sap, it transformed into ultramarine, literally the colour beyond the sea. When you look at the surviving illuminated manuscripts of these maps, the waters are not merely painted, they're paved with crushed jewels. The deep, vibrant blue radiates a serene luxury, a heavy, soothing colour that invites the tired eyes to rest. It is a beautiful thought that to map the vast, liquid surface of our oceans, humans reach directly into the dark, silent veins of the earth, using the ancient stones of the mountains to capture the eternal, swaying depth of the sea. As your gaze traces those vibrant, jewelled coastlines, you can almost hear the soft, rhythmic lap of the tide. And as that imaginary tide gently rolls in and slowly pulls back out, notice how your own breath naturally mirrors that exact same rhythm. The body grows heavier, sinking just a little deeper into comfort. There is nothing you need to hold on to, no details you must perfectly recall. The mind can simply drift, floating smoothly from the warm, painted waters of the Mediterranean to a landscape defined by cold, crisp winds and perfect, unyielding silence. Far to the north, along the jagged, icy coasts of Greenland, the indigenous Inuit people did not use fragile paper, silk, or crushed gems to find their way. In a world where fierce snowstorms could suddenly white out the sky, and the long polar nights swallowed the horizon in absolute darkness, they needed a map that did not rely on the eyes. They needed a map they could physically feel. Using the small, precious pieces of driftwood that washed ashore on the freezing tides, they carved three-dimensional tactile models of the coastline. These small, smooth pieces of wood, known as amasalik maps, were perfectly shaped to fit entirely inside the warm, heavy fur mittens of a hunter sitting low in a kayak. As they paddled through the black, freezing water, a hunter could slip a hand inside their coat, run a bare thumb along the carefully notched edge of the wood, and perfectly understand the shape of the fjords, the hidden bays, and the sharp, protective peninsulas that surrounded them. The map was read entirely by touch. It is a profound testament to human adaptability and the deep, silent connection between a person and their environment. When the light completely fails and the world goes entirely dark, we can still find our way home by simply reaching out, feeling the familiar edges of our reality and trusting the steady knowledge held right in the palm of our hand. Moving away from the freezing northern waters, let us step back onto solid ground, warming our feet on a sprawling floor made of millions of tiny sun-baked stones. In the quiet, dusty town of Madaba, in modern-day Jordan, lies the oldest surviving cartographic depiction of the Holy Land. But this map is not rolled up in a dark library or displayed behind museum glass. It is built directly into the floor of an ancient Byzantine church. Created over 1,500 years ago, the Madaba map is a colossal mosaic, pieced together with over 2 million individual, carefully cut squares of coloured rock, known as tesserae. Imagine the slow, meditative patience required to build the world one pebble at a time. The artisans laid down white limestone for the bright desert sands, dark volcanic basalt for the deep, cooling shadows of the mountains, and shimmering green glass for the still waters of the Dead Sea. They included exquisite miniature details, small palm trees swaying gently by an oasis, a tiny ferry boat crossing the Jordan River, and the walled city of Jerusalem viewed from above. To read this map in ancient times, you did not hold it in your hands, you walked slowly across it. You literally journeyed over the geography, your footsteps echoing softly against the stone, feeling the vastness of the region beneath the soles of your feet. It grounds us in the soothing realization that geography is not just an abstract concept we study from afar, but a physical, textured reality we exist upon, piece by tiny, perfect piece. The rough texture of stone slowly gives way to the cool, perfect reflection of polished metal. In the 12th century, the brilliant Arab geographer Muhammad Al-Idrisi was invited to the sunny Mediterranean island of Sicily by King Roger II. Together, They spent 15 peaceful years compiling knowledge from Islamic merchants, Norman knights, and Greek scholars to create one of the most accurate maps of the medieval world, known as the Tabula Rogeriana. But the king did not just want a fragile book, he wanted an eternal monument. Al-Idrisi had the entire map engraved onto a massive solid disc of pure silver, weighing over 400 pounds. The vast surface gleamed, catching the soft, flickering candlelight of the royal court. Yet, if you were to look at this magnificent silver map today, something might feel wonderfully disorienting. Al-Idrisi, following the Islamic cartographic tradition of his time, placed the warm, sacred direction of the south at the very top of the map, and the cold, distant north at the bottom. Europe sits comfortably in the lower half, while the vast expanse of Africa rises majestically above it. It is a beautiful, gentle reminder that up and down, north and south, are entirely arbitrary human inventions. The Earth floats in the infinite weightless darkness of space, without a ceiling or a floor. By simply flipping our perspective, by turning the heavy silver disc around, the whole world instantly looks new, fresh, and completely full of different possibilities. It is deeply relaxing to let go of the rigid directions we're so used to carrying, to realize that there is no absolute right way up. You can simply rest exactly where you are, allowing gravity to hold you perfectly, gently in place, safe in the knowledge that whichever way you happen to be facing right now is exactly the right direction. As we let the heavy silver fade into the shadows, the light of our lamp warms the thick, pale surface of a single, massive piece of dried calf skin, known as vellum. This is the Hereford Mappa Mundi, drawn in England over 700 years ago. Measuring over 5 feet tall, it is the largest surviving complete map of the medieval world. But if you try to use this beautifully inked parchment to sail a wooden ship or walk to another city, you will quickly become entirely lost. The monk who drew this masterpiece was not mapping the physical dirt and water of the earth. He was mapping the intricate spiritual architecture of the human soul. Jerusalem rests in the exact unmoving centre, the spiritual heart of the drawn world. Time and space are woven softly and seamlessly together. Look closely at the delicate edges, and you will see historical events from centuries past happening right alongside the present day. You will find a tiny, intricate drawing of the labyrinth of the Minotaur from ancient Greek myths, placed comfortably near real, bustling cities. It is a landscape of profound meaning, rather than a landscape of mere distance. It gently asks the viewer to travel inward, to navigate the stories, the morals, and the quiet mysteries of faith. It stands as a profound comfort, suggesting that sometimes the most important maps we will ever consult are the ones that chart the invisible contours of what we believe, rather than the physical ground where we are standing. From the quiet inward focus of a medieval monastery, the narrative flows out through an open stone window, carrying the faint, soothing scent of the sea breeze. In the busy sunlit ports of the Mediterranean, sailors relied on a completely different kind of cartography, practical, weather-beaten and mathematically beautiful. They used what are known as portolan charts. Drawn on incredibly durable sheepskin, which often still retained the natural shape of the animal's neck, these maps were covered in a delicate, complex spiderweb of perfectly straight, intersecting lines. These were the rum lines. They radiated outward from beautifully decorated compass roses, crisscrossing the blank oceans in a mesmerizing geometric harmony. They did not show the interior of the continents. The land was left completely bare, a quiet void of empty parchment. Every single drop of ink was dedicated to the jagged, heavily detailed coastlines and the safe, deep waters of the sea. To navigate, a captain would lay a heavy brass compass directly onto the skin, aligning their ship's physical heading with the painted lines of the chart. There is a deep, hypnotic rhythm to looking at a portolan chart. It looks like the intricate rigging of a sailing ship captured perfectly on paper. A beautiful, ordered geometry that promised to guide sailors through the most chaotic and terrifying winter storms, returning them safely to the warm, welcoming harbours of home. But sailors were not the only ones who needed a map to navigate the immense dark. Let the damp sea breeze dry and warm into the still ancient air of the Gobi Desert. In the early 20th century, hidden behind a sealed wall in the Mogao caves along the ancient Silk Road, explorers found a breathtaking treasure that had slept in utter, undisturbed silence for 1,000 years. It was a delicate, incredibly long scroll of soft mulberry paper, painted during the Chinese Tang dynasty. It is known as the Dunhuang Star Map, and it is the oldest complete preserved star atlas in the history of the world. With quiet, meticulous brushstrokes of black and red ink, the ancient astronomer divided the vast night sky into precise regions, mapping over 1,300 individual glowing stars. They drew faint, sweeping lines between them, grouping the distant suns into elegant constellations that form the shape of emperors, chariots, and winding celestial rivers. To hold this fragile, dry mulberry paper in your mind is to hold a mirror to the infinite. Long before heavy glass telescopes, human beings sat in the cool desert night, tilted their heads back and patiently recorded the exact positions of the cosmos. It brings a profound sense of peace to realize that the exact same stars they charted with such quiet reverence are the ones shining softly above your roof tonight, an eternal glowing map written across the ceiling of the world. Letting the mind drift up into that vast, quiet space between the stars, it is easy to feel how small and weightless our daily worries truly are. The universe is incredibly vast, deeply silent, and beautifully patterned. You do not need to figure it all out tonight. You can simply be a small, quiet part of it, resting comfortably under the same ancient protective canopy of the night sky. As the long night slowly turns, we eventually look for the comforting light of the morning. When we look at maps today, we almost universally assume that the top of the page should point directly to the north. But this was not always the case. For many centuries in the ancient and medieval Western world, maps were beautifully drawn with the east at the very top. The reason for this is as gentle and warm as the morning sun itself. The east is where the sun rises, bringing light, heat, and the quiet, reliable promise of a completely new day. In many early belief systems, the east was also considered the location of the Garden of Eden, the earthly paradise where all life began. Because the east was placed at the top of these maps, whenever travellers or scholars physically aligned their parchments with the real world, they were said to be orienting themselves, finding the Orient, finding the East. We still use that beautiful, resonant word today. When you feel a little lost and need to get your bearings, you're simply trying to orient yourself, to find your morning light, your quiet beginning. It is a lovely, linguistic echo that connects our modern struggles to find our way with the ancient human desire to simply look toward the dawn and feel the warmth of the rising sun. As that imagined morning light fully illuminates our ancient wooden table, it falls softly upon the grandest map of our journey so far. In the middle of the 15th century, in a quiet, secluded monastery on a small island in the Venetian lagoon, a monk named Fra Mauro sat at his wooden desk. He rarely left the peaceful confines of his cloister, yet he was quietly drawing the most detailed, magnificent map of the entire known world. His map was a massive circle, over 6 feet across, painted with exquisite, loving detail on fine parchment stretched over a heavy wooden frame. But Fra Mauro did something truly revolutionary. For centuries, map makers had filled the unknown edges of the earth with terrifying monsters, boiling oceans, and impossible walls of fire. Fra Mauro, working in the quiet, intellectual hum of the early Renaissance, gently erased them. He interviewed thousands of sailors, merchants, and weary travellers who returned to the wooden docks of Venice. He listened carefully to their stories, filtered out the exaggerated myths, and painted only what could be proven. He replaced the fearsome dragons with beautiful, realistic drawings of magnificent merchant ships, towering stone castles, and deep, quiet forests. He proved that the truth of the world is infinitely more beautiful and far less frightening than the monsters we create in our own minds. His grand circular map stands as a testament to the calming power of gentle curiosity, the shedding of old fears, and the quiet joy of simply wanting to understand the world exactly as it is. And as we linger over Fra Mauro's magnificent, monster-free world, tracing the beautiful, safe coastlines of a newly understood Earth, we realise that maps do much more than just show us where the land meets the sea. They show us how we view ourselves within the vastness of creation. The inked lines on the parchment begin to shift again, whispering of ancient cities hidden beneath the shifting sand, and invisible borders drawn across empty plains, drawing us even deeper into the beautiful endless cartography of human memory. Imagine running your fingertips slowly over a vast, cold and beautifully smooth expanse of pale stone. We have left the delicate, yielding surface of ancient parchment behind and stepped quietly into the grand, gently echoing halls of 3rd century Rome. Here, the map is not something you roll up and carry in a soft leather satchel. It is a permanent, monumental fixture, an architectural wonder known as the former Urbis Romae. This was a massive, incredibly detailed map of the entire city of Rome, carved meticulously into 150 gigantic slabs of heavy pale marble. It was originally mounted high upon an interior stone wall of the Temple of Peace, watching silently over the citizens below. Every single room, every winding stone staircase, every public bathhouse, and every quiet, sun-dappled courtyard in the vast empire's capital was precisely engraved into the solid rock. Today, only about 10% of this magnificent map survives, broken into over 1,000 heavy, jagged shards, a colossal ancient jigsaw puzzle resting silently in the velvet-lined drawers of quiet museums. Yet, the sheer scale and weight of the attempt is profoundly deeply calming. It represents a bustling, chaotic, loud city trying to perfectly understand itself, carving its own fleeting existence into the permanent, unyielding quiet of marble, creating a heavy, enduring memory meant to softly outlast the very walls it depicted. Leaving the heavy, solid marble streets far below, we gently tilt our heads backward, letting our focus shift entirely to the unseen currents of the air. In the ancient city of Athens there stands a map not of solid land or liquid water, but of the invisible, swirling forces that move quietly across the sky. It is the Tower of the Winds, a beautiful octagonal marble structure built in the 1st century before the Common Era. It functioned as an ancient timepiece and a 3-dimensional architectural map of the breeze. Each of its 8 beautifully proportioned faces points directly toward one of the 8 points of the compass. Carved high up on each face is a unique, deeply detailed relief sculpture of the specific wind deity associated with that exact direction, depicting them gracefully carrying the type of weather they were known to bring, from gentle, flower-scattering spring breezes to the heavy, rain-soaked cloaks of winter gales. To read this map, you did not need to trace lines with your finger or hold a compass. You simply had to stand quietly in its cool shadow, close your eyes, and feel the air moving across your face. It is a beautiful, grounding realization that geography is not merely the ground we stand upon. It is the living, breathing atmosphere that surrounds us, a map that is constantly and softly whispering against our skin. That same invisible ancient wind carries us gently eastward, dropping us softly into the deep, cool, and profound silence of the Syrian desert at night. In the 9th century, inside the great lamplit House of Wisdom in Baghdad, the Caliph al-Ma'mun possessed a deep desire to know the exact circumference of the entire earth. His brilliant scholars did not sit in closed rooms relying purely on abstract, quiet mathematics. They stepped out into the physical, breathing world. Under the vast, unbroken canopy of a star-filled night sky, they walked. They marched directly north across the flat, quiet desert sands, patiently laying down lengths of wooden measuring rods and heavy surveyor's ropes, measuring the shape of the earth footstep by deliberate footstep. They walked rhythmically, peacefully, until the angle of the North Star resting brightly above them had shifted by exactly 1 degree in the heavens. Through this patient, rhythmic journey, they calculated the size of the globe with astonishing, beautiful accuracy. It is incredibly soothing to picture this specific scene, a map of the world built not out of wet ink or carved stone, but out of literal human footsteps in the pure, ancient silver light of the stars. The earth was measured through the slow, meditative rhythm of walking under a silent, sheltering sky, connecting the deep dust of the desert directly to the brilliant, quiet diamonds of the cosmos. As the memory of those ancient footsteps gently fades into the quiet desert night, notice the gentle rhythm of your own resting state. The body grows slightly heavier, sinking completely and safely into its own comfortable space. The breath rises and falls naturally, effortlessly mirroring the slow, eternal turning of the stars above. You do not need to hold on to any of these distant cities' names or historical numbers. Let them just be soft, pleasant echoes, washing over you and drifting quietly away into the dark. From the dry, shifting dunes of the desert, we transition softly to a completely different texture, the rich, fibrous, and deeply earthy surface of beaten tree bark. In 16th century Mesoamerica, indigenous mapmakers created stunning visual documents on traditional amate paper, crafted carefully from the inner bark of wild fig trees. One such masterpiece is known as the Mapa de Quotinchan No. 2. When you look at this vibrant painted bark, you're not just looking at a static, frozen map of space. You're looking at a living, breathing map of time. Alongside the carefully drawn, sweeping mountains, twisting rivers, and blooming flora, there are tiny, delicate, intricately painted footprints winding their way across the entire landscape. These small, rhythmic footprints tell the story of a great journey, the slow, multi-generational migration of a people finding their home. The geography of the earth and the history of the family are seamlessly, beautifully braided together onto the bark. It reminds us gently that the land holds all of our stories. A map can be a diary of where a community has been, a soft, winding trail of footprints leaving the past behind while simultaneously, patiently pointing the way home. It tells us that we leave an invisible, beautiful mark on every single path we gently tread. Those delicate painted footprints gradually transition in the mind's eye to a heavy, powerful, and utterly still stance carved in unyielding stone. Imagine a beautifully sculpted Roman marble statue from the 2nd century, known to history as the Farnese Atlas. He's a muscular, grand figure, kneeling down on one knee, holding a massive, heavy sphere effortlessly and eternally on his broad shoulders. But the great, quiet secret of this magnificent statue is that the sphere he carries is not the earth, it is the sky. It is the oldest surviving complete representation of the celestial constellations, a map of the night sky carved deeply into solid rock. You can trace the outlines of the mythical ram, the great bear, and the winged horse directly into the cool marble. What makes this particular map so deeply calming and entirely unique is its impossible perspective. It shows the ancient Greek constellations exactly as they would appear if you were standing on the very outside of the universe, looking back gently in at the stars. It requires a profound, breathtaking shift in scale. It invites us to step completely out of our own vast, overwhelming universe, to shrink all of space down into a single, quiet sphere, and to imagine it all being held gently and safely on strong, unmoving shoulders. Dropping softly down from those distant, quiet stars, we descend gently into the cool, grey, slowly rolling fog of the North Atlantic Ocean. For hundreds of years, carefully drawn ancient and medieval maps featured a large, mysterious island resting off the western coast of Ireland. It was called High Brazil. According to gentle sailor's lore, this mythical island was entirely cloaked in thick, impenetrable mist, remaining completely invisible to passing wooden ships. It was said that the heavy fog would lift, and the island would miraculously reveal its peaceful, perfect shores for only one single day every 7 years. Cartographers, relying on the whispered dreams of mariners, beautifully painted this phantom island onto their charts, trusting completely in its existence. They drew it affectionately as a perfect safe circle, with a calm river running exactly through its centre. The sheer presence of High Brazil on a map is a quiet comfort. The human mind loves a gentle mystery. The inclusion of these phantom islands allowed people to believe in a quiet magic hiding just beyond the fog, a reminder that it is perfectly fine and even beautiful for some things in this world to remain delightfully hidden and peacefully out of reach. Just as that mythical island rests safely behind its protective blanket of mist, your own mind can gently retreat into its own quiet, comfortable fog. The body is secure, safe, and entirely warm in this exact moment. There is a deep, abiding comfort in simply not needing to know everything, in letting the sharp edges of the day blur, soften, and quietly dissolve into the gentle, heavy mist of sleep. From out of that blurring fog, the mind slowly, effortlessly, finds a soft, comforting sense of absolute order. We travel to the elegant, quiet, and highly structured courts of 3rd century China, where a brilliant scholar named Pei Shu was appointed as the Minister of Works. Long before European map makers discovered mathematical coordinate systems, Pei Shu brought absolute harmonious order to cartography. He created a strict, brilliant set of 6 foundational principles for map making, drawing precise, perfect grids onto large, smooth sheets of woven silk and durable hemp. He established the calming concept of a measured scale, where one drawn inch perfectly and reliably represented exactly 100 physical miles. He mapped the chaotic, jagged mountains and the wild, flooding rivers by trapping them peacefully within perfect geometric squares. There is a profound, deep relaxation in observing the soft texture of fine silk holding such absolute mathematical peace. It provides a soothing realization that there can be beautiful, predictable structure hiding within the chaos of nature. To know that the vast, overwhelming, untamed world outside the window can be conceptually folded down into neat, perfectly proportional lines, resting quietly on a polished wooden desk. As we gaze lazily at that neat, ordered silk grid, the fabric slowly dissolves into a radiant, warm burst of pure, shimmering gold leaf. We arrive on the sun-drenched Mediterranean island of Majorca in the year 1375, where a master Jewish cartographer named Cresques Abraham produced a breathtaking masterpiece known as the Catalan Atlas. This map was drawn and painted across 6 massive, heavy sheets of fine vellum, glowing with expensive lapis lazuli blue and real, softly gleaming gold. But this map was absolutely not meant to be hung on a flat wall. It was designed to be laid completely flat on a grand, circular wooden table in the Royal Library. Because the beautifully written text and the exquisite illustrations of distant kings holding golden apples were oriented facing outward in all different directions, the viewer had to physically walk slowly around the table to read it. It is a painted world with no true top and no true bottom. It invites a gentle, kinetic relationship with the world, gently asking you to circle it, changing your physical perspective with every single soft step, constantly bathed in the soft, flickering glow of painted gold and the deep, restful blue of ancient seas. Slowly shrinking that grand golden table down in our minds, we find something small, heavy, and cool enough to hold entirely enclosed in the palm of your hand. In ancient Greece, the bustling city of Zancle, located in modern-day Sicily, possessed a beautiful natural harbour that was perfectly shaped like a curved, sweeping agricultural sickle. Rather than merely drawing their beloved protective coastline on fragile parchment, the citizens decided to mint their geography directly into solid silver. They stamped the exact, sickle-shaped curve of their quiet harbour onto their silver coins, creating tiny, perfect, 3-dimensional maps of their home. These were maps small enough to slip into a soft leather pouch, small enough to close your fists securely around. When you held one, You could feel the raised, curved edge of the silver harbour pressing gently against your thumb. There is something deeply reassuring about this very idea. The thought that you could carry the exact protective shape of your entire world right in your pocket. A tiny, heavy, silver talisman of home, offering quiet comfort and a grounding sense of absolute place, no matter how far away across the sea you might travel. From the flat, cool surface of a silver coin, the shape of the world gently expands once more, softly rounding out into a perfect, smooth sphere. In the year 1492, in a quiet, dust-moated workshop in Germany, a merchant named Martin Behem directed the creation of the oldest surviving terrestrial globe. It is known affectionately to history as the Erdapfel, or the Earth Apple. It is a delicate, remarkably beautiful creation, fashioned from layers of linen wrapped tightly around a wooden core and carefully painted by local artisans using rich, vibrant pigments that have softly faded over centuries into warm golden hues. You can almost smell the faint comforting scent of old varnish, dried oil and aged wood. It depicts the shape of the world just before the Americas were fully mapped by Europeans, showing a vast, open, uninterrupted ocean stretching peacefully between Europe and Asia. When you look at the Earth Apple, you're looking at a world wrapped entirely onto itself. There are no sharp edges to fall off, no dark corners to hide in, and no sudden, jarring stops. It is just a continuous, unbroken, gentle curve. It stands as the ultimate symbol of a connected whole Earth, a beautiful enclosed loop where every journey, no matter how incredibly long, eventually leads safely and softly back to where it began. As we watch the painted linen of the Earth Apple turn incredibly slowly on its polished brass axis, we realise that all of these ancient maps are not merely tools for finding a physical destination. They are quiet, patient attempts to hold the infinite size of reality securely in our hands. The soft, continuous turning of the globe creates a gentle, rhythmic breeze, a quiet, soothing wind that is slowly blowing us toward new landscapes, new ancient textures, and even older, deeper memories, sleeping soundly just beneath the painted surface of the world. Imagine reaching out to gently touch that painted surface, only to find that it is no longer smooth paper, cold silver, or polished stone, but the soft, tightly wound texture of spun cotton and coarse alpaca wool. High in the breathtaking thin air of the Andes Mountains, the ancient Inca Empire ruled over a vast, jagged landscape of towering peaks and deep, shadowed valleys. To map this overwhelming vertical world, they did not use flat canvases or two-dimensional drawings. Instead, they used a deeply tactile physical system of knotted strings known as a quipu, intimately connected to a grand, invisible web called the Seca system. Imagine standing in the sacred golden courtyard of the Coricancha temple in Cusco. From this exact quiet centre, 41 invisible lines radiated outward across the mountains, stretching for hundreds of miles. These lines were not drawn on any parchment. They were walked, memorised, and recorded through the intricate, heavy knots of the quipu. Different colours of dyed wool, the precise direction of the spin, and the placement of the knots all held the deep geographic and spiritual memory of shrines, water sources and mountain passes. To read this map, a wise keeper would close their eyes and slowly run their sensitive fingertips down the hanging threads, reading the landscape entirely through the gentle tension of the knots. It is a profoundly beautiful realization that a map does not have to be something we only look at. It can be something we feel, a physical woven memory of the earth that we can hold tightly and safely in our hands. From these tangible, knotted threads woven across the quiet mountains, the mind can easily unspool toward a completely invisible kind of thread, one made entirely of breath, rhythm, and vibration. In the vast, sweeping, and beautifully silent expanse of the Australian outback, Aboriginal peoples developed one of the oldest and most remarkable navigational systems in human history, the song lines. Here, the map of the continent is not kept in a library, nor is it drawn in the sand. It is kept safely within the human voice. The entire landscape, every hidden, cool waterhole, every towering red rock formation, every dry riverbed, is intricately described in ancient melodic songs that have been passed down through countless generations. The creators of this world left behind a musical trail. By singing the specific verses in the correct order, a traveller can walk across thousands of miles of seemingly featureless shimmering desert without ever losing their way. The rhythm of the song perfectly matches the physical rhythm of walking the land. It is a stunning, deeply comforting perspective on geography. It reveals that the Earth is not a silent, empty place waiting to be labelled, but a living, resonant environment that is constantly singing to us, if only we know how to listen. You can never truly lose a map that is woven inextricably into your own voice. As the echoes of those ancient melodies gently fade into the vast, cooling expanse of the desert night, you might notice the quiet rhythm of your own pulse settling into a slower, steadier, and more peaceful beat. The mind does not need to actively wander anymore. It can simply rest exactly where it is, allowing the body to grow beautifully heavy, sinking deeper and deeper into the soft, warm comfort of the present moment. There is no destination to reach tonight, only the gentle, drifting journey. When the night finally yields to the quiet arrival of the morning, that changing light fundamentally alters how the Earth can be measured. Returning to the great libraries of antiquity, the brilliant scholar Ptolemy realized that he did not necessarily need to walk the Earth to map its immense shape. He could simply watch the sky. He mapped the world using the silent, predictable behavior of sunlight, creating a system known as the climata. Instead of dividing the globe by arbitrary political borders or mountain ranges, he divided the Earth into horizontal parallel bands based entirely on the maximum length of daylight experienced on the midsummer solstice. He charted the world by observing the precise angle of shadows cast by a simple wooden stick at noon. It is a map drawn entirely by the shifting golden rays of the sun. There is a deep, abiding warmth in this ancient cartographic concept. It suggests that our place in the world is determined not by the cold dirt beneath our feet, but by the amount of light that gently falls upon our shoulders. It is a geography of pure warmth, mapping the Earth by tracing the slow, eternal, and comforting blanket of daylight as it wraps around the globe. And it was under the light of that same eternal sun that a completely different culture decided to capture the vastness of their world on a canvas of pure, shimmering light. In the year 1389, during the early days of the Chinese Ming dynasty, court artisans unrolled an absolutely massive, flawless sheet of fine, woven silk, covering over 38 square meters of the palace floor. Upon this vast, soft fabric, they painted the Daming Hunyi Tu, the amalgamated map of the Great Ming Empire. Using deep, calming mineral pigments of dark green and heavy, lapis blue, they painted the towering mountains as jagged, beautiful teeth, and the great rivers as elegant, sweeping ribbons of life. But what makes this massive silk map so magnificent is its breathtaking global perspective. Centuries before the widespread age of European exploration, this map accurately depicts the distant, curving shape of the African continent at its far left edge, complete with an enormous painted lake in its centre, representing the source of the Nile. The sheer scale of the silk required to make it, and the vastness of the empire trying to carefully see itself, is incredibly soothing to contemplate. It is a sweeping, gentle reminder of how wide and interconnected the world has always been, painted softly on a fabric so delicate that a strong breeze could make the entire world ripple and wave. As the shimmering, painted threads of silk slowly dissolve into the mist of our journey, a new texture emerges beneath our resting fingertips, thicker, rougher, and bearing the beautiful, irregular imperfections of the natural world. This is a single, heavy piece of dried animal skin, carefully scraped and prepared in 14th century Britain. It is known today as the Guff Map, one of the earliest and most accurate surviving depictions of the island of Great Britain. While the coastlines are drawn with stunning intuitive accuracy, there is one particular hypnotic detail that immediately captures the quiet, resting mind. The ancient cartographer did not draw the hundreds of winding streams and rushing rivers in shades of blue. Instead, every single waterway on the map is painted in a deep, vibrant, striking crimson red. They branch out from the coastlines and weave through the green hills like a vast, complex circulatory system. When you gaze at the Guff map, the island ceases to be a cold, static piece of geography. It transforms into a living, breathing organism. The red rivers look like pulsing veins and arteries, carrying the lifeblood of the land from the high, silent mountains down to the salty sea. It is a profoundly comforting way to view the earth, not as an object to be conquered, but as a living, resting companion, complete with its own quiet pulse and steady heartbeat. The image of those red, branching arteries slowly washes out to sea, carrying our minds away from the rain-swept green hills of Britain and into the deep, warm turquoise waters of the Mediterranean. In the year 1513, an Ottoman admiral and master cartographer named Piri Reis sat quietly in his study, surrounded by the scent of old leather and salty sea air. He took a beautifully prepared sheet of smooth gazelle skin and began to draw a masterpiece of global synthesis. The Piri Reis map is incredibly famous today because it is one of the oldest surviving maps to show the newly discovered shores of the Americas, but its true beauty lies in its quiet spirit of harmony. Piri Reis did not just use Ottoman knowledge. He actively collected over 20 different source maps from all over the world, including ancient Greek charts, Portuguese navigational grids, and most remarkably a stolen, heavily guarded map drawn by Christopher Columbus himself. He took the closely guarded secrets of empires that were actively at war, and he gently, seamlessly stitched them together onto one peaceful piece of parchment. He reconciled the conflicting lines and the different languages, creating a unified, elegant portrait of the Western Ocean. The gazelle skin map stands as a beautiful testament to the idea that knowledge, like the deep ocean itself, cannot be contained by borders. It is a peaceful gathering place where the fragmented, competing visions of humanity are gently blended into a single, quiet, and beautiful truth. Just as those diverse, scattered fragments of knowledge were gently gathered into one cohesive, beautiful whole, your own scattered thoughts from the long day are now softening, merging into a single, peaceful stream of quiet rest. There is no need to hold on to any of them tightly. Let them drift. The breath mimics the slow, rhythmic push and pull of the ocean tide, carrying you safely and securely into deeper relaxation. From the slow, rocking waves of the ocean, we gently raise our eyes from the ink-stained parchment and look straight up into the deep, absolute blackness of the ancient Mesopotamian night. More than 3,000 years ago, Babylonian astronomers looked up at the exact same stars we see tonight, but they did not map them by drawing intricate mythological pictures. Instead, they mapped the heavens through the quiet, absolute poetry of perfect timing. They created the Muldot Apin, a series of heavy, damp clay tablets covered in tiny, wedge-shaped cuneiform script. Rather than showing a spatial grid of the sky, these tablets contain exhaustive, beautifully precise lists detailing the exact moments when specific stars and constellations would softly rise above the eastern horizon just before the dawn. They map the cosmos not as a static painting, but as a slowly turning eternal clock. To read this map, you did not need a telescope. You needed profound, meditative patience. You had to sit perfectly still in the cool night air, letting hours pass, waiting for the gentle, glowing arrival of a familiar star. It reminds us that sometimes the best way to understand the vastness of the universe is not to try and see it all at once, but to sit quietly in the dark and simply wait for the light to come to you. From the slow, eternal turning of the silent heavens, our gaze lowers back down to the dusty, heavy earth, where human beings sought a different kind of predictable, comforting rhythm. At the height of the Roman Empire, the known world was crisscrossed by tens of thousands of miles of perfectly straight paved stone roads. To navigate this overwhelming, massive network, Roman travellers did not use maps with drawings of mountains or winding coastlines. They used something much simpler and deeply calming, the Antonine itinerary. This was not a visual map at all, but a long, quiet, incredibly detailed list. It simply listed the names of towns and the exact number of miles between them. But more importantly, it carefully noted the locations of the mansions, the official state-run resting places and warm inns scattered along the endless highways. A traveller crossing the desolate, sweeping plains of ancient Europe did not need to know the shape of the continent. They only needed to know exactly how far they had to walk before they could safely rest their head for the night. The entire sprawling, violent and chaotic empire was conceptually reduced to a gentle, predictable sequence of safe havens, warm meals and quiet beds. It is the ultimate cartography of comfort, mapping the world entirely by its spaces of rest. Leaving the endless dusty highways of antiquity behind, our perspective undergoes a beautiful, magical shift in scale, shrinking the entire universe down to something unimaginably delicate. In the mid-13th century, an anonymous monk with incredibly steady hands and a quiet, devoted heart created the Psalter World Map. This map is not a massive wall hanging or a heavy stone monument. It is a miniature masterpiece, measuring barely 3.5 inches tall, carefully tucked into the pages of a small personal prayer book meant to be held closely to the chest. To look at it, you almost have to hold your breath. Despite its tiny size, the artist managed to paint an incredibly rich, detailed vision of the entire medieval world, complete with the swirling red waters of the Red Sea, the towering walls of Jerusalem in the very centre, and tiny gentle angels holding the winds at the very edges of the cosmos. The lines are so unimaginably fine that they seem to have been painted with a brush made from a single hair. There is a profound, intimate comfort in the Psalter map. It takes the terrifying, overwhelming and infinite vastness of the universe and gently shrinks it down until it is small enough to fit completely within the palm of your hand. It is a quiet whisper of a map, a private, peaceful universe that you can close within the pages of a book whenever you need to close your eyes and rest. From that magnificent tiny universe hidden within the pages of a closed book, the lines of the world gently expand and simplify once more, softening into the most elegant and peaceful geometry imaginable. For centuries in the early Middle Ages, scholars did not map the world with chaotic, jagged coastlines or complex, overwhelming details. They mapped it using a symbol of absolute, restful perfection, the TO map. Imagine a perfect, sweeping circle drawn onto a blank page. This is the O, representing the great, quiet, unbroken ocean that surrounds all land. Inside this perfect circle, a straight vertical line and a straight horizontal line intersect to form a capital T. This T represents the great rivers and seas that peacefully divide the 3 known continents, Asia, Europe and Africa. That is all. There are no cluttered cities, no terrifying sea monsters, and no confusing winding roads. It is an image of profound, meditative simplicity. It looks less like a geographic chart and more like a beautiful, glowing, stained glass window in a quiet, empty cathedral. The TO map was not meant to help a traveller find a physical city. It was meant to help a restless mind find a sense of perfect, divine balance. It strips away all the exhausting, chaotic noise of the physical world, leaving behind only harmonious symmetry and absolute peace. The slow, hypnotic turning of this perfect conceptual wheel gently blurs the sharp edges of history, drawing our minds ever deeper into those quiet, uncharted territories where geography finally surrenders entirely to the restorative, boundless power of dreams. Emerging softly from that quiet, uncharted territory of dreams, imagine a sudden, cool weight settling gently into the palms of your hands. It is not the light, fibrous touch of paper, nor the fragile, brittle edge of dry clay. It is a solid, heavy disc of ancient metal, resting quietly in the dark. Forged in Central Europe over 3,600 years ago, this is the Nebra sky disk. It is the oldest concrete map of the cosmos ever discovered. The surface of the heavy bronze has slowly aged over millennia, acquiring a deep, breathtaking patina, a rich, velvety teal and dark ocean blue, mimicking the exact colour of the sky just moments after the sun has completely set. Pressed firmly into this dark metallic twilight are brilliant, shimmering shapes of pure hammered gold. There is a full moon, a gentle crescent, and a delicate, sparkling cluster of stars representing the Pleiades. It is a portable universe. The ancient people who crafted it did not need to map the borders of their forests or the edges of their rivers. They chose to map the eternal, silent turning of the heavens. Holding this disk in your mind is deeply grounding. It takes the vast, overwhelming infinity of the night sky and gently condenses it into a single, beautiful, heavy object that you can safely hold, turning the terrifying vastness of space into a quiet, comforting companion. From the heavy golden stars of that bronze night, we drift slowly down, floating gently back to the warm, sun-baked dirt of the earth. In the ancient, fertile plains of Mesopotamia, around 3.5 millennia ago, a Sumerian scribe sat quietly beside the slow-moving waters of the Euphrates. With a small, sharp reed and a soft, damp handful of river mud, they created the Nippur map. This small, fragile clay tablet, small enough to balance effortlessly on your fingertips, is the oldest known map of a specific city in the history of the world. It does not show empires or distant mythical continents. It shows the quiet, intimate details of daily life. The scribe pressed delicate, precise lines into the wet clay to show the towering protective city walls, the grand, sweeping gates, the silent, empty parklands, and the gently flowing canals that brought cool, fresh water directly to the people. There is a profound, gentle comfort in this tiny piece of earth. It reminds us that long before we sought to map the entire globe, our very first cartographic instinct was simply to map our home, to define a safe, organised space in the middle of a wild, chaotic world, drawing a circle around the places and the people we love, and pressing that beautiful memory permanently into the very soil beneath our feet. As the ancient clay slowly dries and fades into the dust of time, it is replaced by a vast, smooth, and incredibly delicate sheet of pale calfskin vellum. Drawn in the early 9th century within the quiet, echoing stone walls of a Swiss abbey, the plan of St. Gall is a masterpiece of medieval cartography. But this map is uniquely soothing because it charts a place that never actually existed in the physical world. It is a meticulous, breathtaking architectural blueprint for the perfect, ideal monastery. Drawn entirely in perfectly straight lines of vibrant red and deep black ink, it maps out a sanctuary of absolute, unbroken peace. The unknown cartographer lovingly detailed the warm, silent scriptorium where monks would copy ancient books, the long, quiet rows of comfortable beds in the dormitory, and the precise, ordered geometry of the medicinal herb gardens, smelling faintly of lavender, mint, and chamomile. It is a map of a spiritual ideal, a physical layout for inner tranquility. It invites you to wander its drawn hallways, to step away from the noise and rush of the outside world, and to find a quiet, sunlit corner within its painted walls where nothing is required of you, and where time moves only to the slow, gentle ringing of a distant bell. Just as that beautiful, drawn sanctuary offers a perfect retreat, your own mind possesses its own quiet, safe spaces to return to. The body grows a little heavier, sinking comfortably into the softness of the moment. The breath settles into a deep, rhythmic calm, requiring absolutely no effort. You can simply let these ancient places wash over you, keeping whatever feels peaceful and letting the rest gently drift away. From the fragile, curling vellum of the monastery, the mind's eye travels eastward, finding rest against a surface that is wonderfully cool, heavy, and completely unyielding. In the year 1136, during the Song dynasty of China, artisans created the Yuji-2, or the map of the tracks of Yu. This was not drawn on paper or woven into silk. It was painstakingly carved into a massive towering stele of solid dark stone. What makes this heavy monument so breathtakingly elegant is the absolute precision of its design. The cartographers laid a perfect, rigorous and completely uniform grid over the entire stone, where each carved square represented exactly 100 li, or about 30 miles. Within this perfect mathematical harmony, they carved the vast, twisting, chaotic networks of China's great rivers with a level of accuracy that rivals modern satellite imagery. Tracing the deep, cool grooves of those rivers with your imagination is a deeply hypnotic experience. You can almost feel the fine stone dust on your fingertips, the lingering echo of the artisan's careful chisel. It represents the beautiful marriage of total permanence and constant flow. The unmoving, eternal weight of the dark stone peacefully holds the winding, restless energy of the water, bringing a profound sense of balance and order to the wild, rushing forces of nature. That heavy stone gradually softens and rounds out, lifting effortlessly into the air to form a perfectly balanced floating sphere. In the 5th century, a Roman philosopher named Macrobius helped popularize a deeply comforting, symmetrical vision of the world through what are known as zonal maps. These beautiful circular drawings divided the entire Earth into 5 distinct horizontal bands of climate. There were the 2 freezing, silent poles at the very top and bottom. There was our own temperate habitable zone in the north. And running directly around the middle was a boiling, impassable torrid zone, an ocean of pure heat that no human could ever cross. Because this fiery equator blocked all travel, ancient scholars believed there had to be a perfectly mirrored, unknown continent resting quietly in the southern hemisphere, just to balance the physical weight of the Earth. They called this unreachable land the Antipodes. There is something wonderfully relaxing about the idea of the Antipodes. It is the concept of a perfect, untouched twin to our own world, a vast, silent continent of complete mystery that we can never spoil, never conquer, and never even see. It exists only in the quiet balance of mathematics and the soft, hopeful architecture of the imagination, resting eternally in the unreachable south. Moving away from those grand, sweeping global zones, the lines of our map suddenly simplify, distilling down into a breathtaking minimalist geometry. During the Islamic Golden Age in the 10th century, scholars of the Balkhi school of mapping decided that the chaotic, jagged and unpredictable coastlines of the real world, the dangerous cliffs, the muddy estuaries, the impassable swamps, were simply too messy. They wanted to map the pure, elegant connections between people. They drew the provinces of their vast empire not as they actually looked, but as perfect, interlocking circles, precise squares, and beautiful multi-pointed stars. The rivers were drawn as perfectly straight, parallel lines, and the seas were gentle, smooth crescents. When you look at a Balkhi map, it does not look like a traditional geographic chart. It looks remarkably like a modern, colour-coded subway map. It is an image of pure, distilled harmony. It prioritises the gentle flow of travel and the beautiful underlying relationships between cities, completely ignoring the rough, exhausting obstacles of the physical terrain. It is deeply soothing to the mind to see the complicated, difficult world stripped down to such clean, beautiful, and effortlessly organised shapes, suggesting that beneath all the daily chaos, there is a simple, elegant pattern connecting us all. Those clean, minimalist shapes slowly begin to bloom, filling up with deep, vibrant and incredibly rich pools of colour. In the quiet, mountainous monasteries of 8th century Spain, illuminated manuscripts featured a stunning type of cartography known as the Beatus maps. Painted with incredibly bright saturated pigments, deep lapis blues, vibrant crimson reds, and glowing polished gold, these maps depicted the world not as a sphere or a grid, but as a soft, comforting oval. But the most relaxing and beautiful feature of a Betis map is its absolute edge. The entire oval of the known world is completely, seamlessly surrounded by a thick, dark blue ring of water. This is the great universal ocean. In these ancient drawings, the ocean was not a terrifying void or a dangerous frontier. It was a protective, embracing barrier. It wrapped perfectly around the continents, gently keeping everything safe and contained. It is a deeply comforting psychological image. The world is an island of warmth and light, held securely in the quiet, eternal embrace of a peaceful, boundless sea, assuring the viewer that no matter how far they might wander, they can never truly fall off the edge. And just as that painted ocean wraps safely around the edges of the world, a soft, heavy blanket of calm is wrapping gently around you. There is nowhere else you need to be. The colours of the day are fading into a comfortable resting blue, and the mind is free to wander slowly along these ancient quiet paths, completely safe and perfectly at ease. That protective oval shape slowly stretches and morphs, taking on an even more familiar, deeply personal contour. In 13th century Germany, 30 huge, soft goat skins were carefully stitched together to create the Ebstorf map, a colossal, sweeping vision of the medieval world measuring over 12 feet across. What makes this massive circular map so profoundly moving is that the entire geography of the Earth is painted as literally resting within the body of a gentle, sheltering figure. If you look closely at the very top edge, you can see a softly painted face. At the far left and right edges, open, welcoming hands emerge from the borders, and at the very bottom, 2 resting feet. The cartographer mapped the cold dirt, the deep rivers, and the towering mountains as if they were the literal breathing anatomy of a divine, caring being. It is a stunning, beautiful perspective. It transforms the cold, inanimate rock of the planet into a living, holding embrace. You can almost hear the slow, steady heartbeat of the world pulsing softly beneath the painted mountains and the inked forests. It suggests that when we walk upon the earth, we are not wandering blindly across a dead stone in the dark, but are resting safely within a vast, warm and conscious architecture that gently holds the entire human family. The painted vellum of that grand embrace slowly fades, replaced by the rich, warm, and deeply comforting scent of freshly cut wood and heavy, dark ink. In the year 1507, a cartographer named Martin Waldseemüller created a revolutionary map of the world, famous today as the very first document to ever use the printed word America. But the true, hypnotic beauty of this map lies in the quiet, methodical way it was made. It was not drawn by hand with a single fragile quill. It was painstakingly carved into 12 massive, heavy blocks of solid wood. Imagine the slow, patient, rhythmic sound of the carving tools, gently chipping away the negative space, revealing the sweeping coastlines and the curling waves in the beautiful natural grain of the wood. Then, the thick black ink was rolled smoothly over the surface, and heavy, damp paper was pressed firmly against the blocks. The world was built piece by piece, block by block, slowly assembling a vast new reality in the quiet, dusty air of a Renaissance printing workshop. The slow, deliberate effort required to carve an entire planet into wood is a beautiful testament to human patience, a quiet, repetitive task that brings absolute focus and deep, resting peace to a weary mind. From the heavy, dark ink of the printing press, we finally look out toward the vast, empty oceans depicted on those ancient papers, finding a beautiful, silent symbol of pure direction. On the very oldest maps, the winds that pushed ships across the sea were often drawn as plump, floating human faces, resting softly in the clouds and visibly exhaling long, curling breaths of air from the corners of the parchment. Shutterstock. Otkrit. But as centuries slowly passed, those blowing faces gradually quieted down. They faded away, replaced by the elegant, silent and mathematically perfect geometry of the compass rose. the faces transformed into magnificent multi-pointed stars, meticulously painted in alternating geometric shards of deep red, pitch black and radiant gold. The compass rose became a symbol of absolute unwavering reliability. It does not speak, it does not blow, and it does not judge. It simply sits perfectly still upon the page, its beautiful sharp points radiating outward in absolute silence, offering a quiet, perfect truth. It points the way home without saying a single word, serving as a beautiful, steady anchor in the vast, open and ever-changing sea. And as the beautifully painted points of that golden star slowly begin to rotate in the quiet theatre of your mind, they gently guide us toward even older, softer mysteries. As that golden star rotates, its points begin to soften and bleed into the surrounding parchment, transforming the rigid ink into the fluid, rhythmic strokes of a master calligrapher. We find ourselves in the tranquil libraries of 10th century Baghdad, where the scholar Al-Idrisi is meticulously preparing the Book of Roads and Kingdoms. On his maps, the world is depicted as a perfect serene circle, but it is a world made of colour and shape rather than jagged shorelines. The Mediterranean Sea and the Indian Ocean are drawn as two large symmetrical blue eyes, staring peacefully back at the viewer from the face of the earth. These maps were never intended to be used for measurement or for navigating a physical ship through a storm. They were designed to be meditated upon. By simplifying the world into these clean geometric symmetries, Al-Idrisi allowed the viewer to see the underlying unity of all creation. There is a profound, quiet dignity in this perspective. It suggests that the earth is not a collection of fragmented parts, but a single, harmonious organism, balanced and beautiful in its simplicity. To look upon such a map is to feel the busy noise of the world fall away, replaced by the deep, resonant silence of a universe that is perfectly in place. That sense of cosmic balance carries us away from the ink and parchment, lifting us high into the cold, thin air of the Tibetan plateau. Here, the map is not a tool for travel across the land, but a guide for the journey of the spirit. Imagine a vibrant hand-painted mandala, a sacred map of the hidden kingdom of Shambhala. It is composed of intricate concentric circles and squares, filled with the most delicate details of flowering gardens, crystal palaces, and quiet meditative deities. This is a map of a spiritual geography, where the outer world of mountains and valleys is a perfect reflection of the inner world of the mind. To read this map, you do not use your feet, you use your focus. You start at the outer edges and slowly, peacefully work your way toward the centre, shedding the distractions of the ego with every step. The journey toward the centre of the mandala is a journey toward the centre of yourself. It is an incredibly soothing realization that the most complex and beautiful landscapes we will ever navigate are those contained within our own consciousness. By mapping the path to inner peace, these ancient artists provided a blueprint for a stillness that remains unshaken, no matter how the physical world may shift around us. As the vibrant colours of the mandala begin to swirl and fade into a soft monochromatic haze, you may feel the weight of your own body settling into a similar state of centred stillness. The breath becomes a slow, rhythmic tide, moving in and out with the effortless grace of the deep sea. There is no need to hold on to any one thought or image. Let them drift like clouds across a vast empty sky, appearing for a moment before dissolving back into the quiet blue. The haze clears to reveal a scene of intense quiet focus in a small wood-panelled room in 16th century Flanders. A man named Abraham Ortelius is carefully leafing through dozens of disparate scattered charts, trying to find a way to bind them together. In 1570, he published the Theatrum Orbis Terrarum, or the Theatre of the World. This was the world's first true modern atlas. Before Ortelius, maps were of all different sizes, shapes and scales, making it impossible to compare one region to another. He performed a great act of intellectual calming. He brought everything into a single uniform format. He standardized the world. Every page in his massive book was the same size. Every map used the same elegant copperplate style. By binding the entire known world between two leather covers, he made the vastness of the globe feel manageable and safe. To turn the pages of his atlas is to feel a sense of immense, quiet control over the unknown. It is the joy of a library, of seeing the wild, sprawling diversity of the earth organised into a neat, predictable sequence of beautiful engraved images. It reminds us that there is a deep restorative power in order, and that even the largest mysteries can be understood if we take them one page at a time. This order is not just found in books, but is often carved directly into the very skeleton of the landscape. Travel now to the green, rolling hills of ancient Britain, where the map is written in the earth itself. The Uffington White Horse is a massive, stylized figure of a horse, over 300 feet long, created by cutting deep trenches into the hillside and filling them with crushed white chalk. It has watched over the valley for 3,000 years. This is a geoglyph, a map made of the earth, for the earth. What makes it so fascinatingly peaceful is that its true form can only be seen from high in the sky, a perspective the ancient creators could never have achieved. It was a map drawn for the eyes of the gods, or perhaps for the ancestors drifting in the wind. It represents a profound act of faith and humility. By mapping their sacred symbols into the living hillside, these ancient people anchored themselves to the land in a way that transcends time. To think of the white horse is to feel the immense, slow endurance of the earth. It is a reminder that we are part of a story that began long before us and will continue long after. A silent white line of memory etched into the permanent green of the hills. The permanence of the chalk gives way to something far more fluid and fleeting. We move from the hills of Britain to the bustling, salt-scented docks of medieval Venice. Here, the mapmakers were not concerned with the gods or the spirit, but with the immediate practical safety of the sailor. They created the Isolari, or Books of Islands. These were collections of small, intimate maps, each one focusing on a single, isolated island in the Mediterranean. They were drawn with a loving attention to detail, marking every hidden cove, every freshwater spring, and every safe anchorage. To flip through an isolario is to experience the world as a series of small, perfect sanctuaries. Each island is a world unto itself, a quiet pocket of land surrounded by the vast protective blue of the sea. There is something deeply comforting about this narrow focus. It suggests that we don't always need to see the whole, overwhelming picture of the world. Sometimes, all we need is a map of our own small island, a guide to the local, the immediate, and the safe places where we can pull our ships ashore and rest. As you envision those small, quiet islands, notice how your own awareness has narrowed to the simple, peaceful sensations of your surroundings. The world outside the room has faded away, leaving only the warmth of your bed and the gentle rhythm of your breathing. You're on your own small island of comfort, perfectly protected and entirely at peace. From the sunlit islands of the Mediterranean, we drift back in time to the majestic high-altitude cities of the Aztec Empire. In the mid-16th century, shortly after the arrival of Europeans, indigenous scribes created the Codex Mendoza. The frontispiece of this codex is a stunning map of the city of Tenochtitlan. It depicts the city as a perfect square, divided into 4 quadrants by bright blue canals that cross in the centre. In the very middle of this watery cross sits a single, majestic eagle perched on a cactus, the sacred symbol of the city's founding. This map is a masterpiece of symbolic geography. It does not show the city as it appeared to the eye, but as it existed in the heart and the memory of its people. It is a map of identity. The canals are not just waterways, they are the lifelines that connect the 4 quarters of the world to a single sacred centre. It provides a grounding sense of belonging. It shows that a city is more than just stone and mortar. It is a living, breathing story, organised around a central point of meaning that keeps everything in its proper place. That sense of central meaning travels with us as we move from the stone temples of the Aztecs to the quiet, paper-walled rooms of Edo period Japan. In the 17th century, Japanese cartographers created world maps that were profoundly influenced by their own sense of beautiful, deliberate isolation. In these maps, the islands of Japan are often drawn with exquisite, oversized detail, placed at the very centre of a vast, misty ocean. The rest of the world, China, Europe, the Americas, is depicted as a series of small, distant shapes floating on the far horizons. This was not due to a lack of knowledge, but a choice of perspective. It was a map of a world at peace with itself, a world that felt complete within its own borders. The map reflects a quiet, focused contentment. It suggests that there is a deep joy in fully inhabiting your own space, in cultivating your own garden, and in letting the distant noise of the foreign world remain a soft, blurred memory on the edge of the parchment. It is an invitation to be present, to value the immediate beauty of your own home, and to find the centre of the world exactly where you're standing. Leaving the quiet gardens of Japan, we return to the grand, echoing cathedrals of medieval Europe, where maps were often used to tell the most important story of all, the path to salvation. The Hereford Mappa Mundi is a massive 5-foot-tall sheet of vellum, and it is a map of the world as a spiritual journey. But look closely at the very bottom of the map, near the edges of the known world. There, the artist has drawn the monstrous races, strange, distorted figures with one giant foot, or faces in their chests, or the heads of dogs. For centuries, these figures were seen as symbols of the other, the unknown. But in the quiet, reflective light of the cathedral, they served a different purpose. They were a map of human variety, and a reminder of the infinite creativity of the universe. They represented the idea that even in the furthest, most bizarre corners of the earth, there is a place for every creature. It is a map of radical inclusion. It suggests that no one is truly lost, and that the vastness of the world is large enough to hold all of our differences in a single, divine embrace. It is a calming thought that we are all part of a single, grand, and incredibly diverse tapestry, and that no matter how strange we may feel, we always have a place on the map. This sense of inclusion and diversity finds a new form as we move into the 18th century and the work of a man named William Smith. Smith was a canal surveyor in England, and as he walked the countryside, he began to notice the different layers of rock exposed by the new cuttings. In 1815, he published the first nationwide geological map, a delineation of the strata of England and Wales. This map did not show the surface of the earth. It showed the deep, hidden layers of time beneath it. Smith used vibrant, hand-painted colours to represent different types of rock and soil, bright oranges for sandstone, deep greens for chalk, and dark, heavy greys for coal. It is a map of the Earth's memory. It reveals that the ground we walk upon is actually a thick, heavy book made of stone, with every layer telling a story of ancient seas, tropical forests, and vanished worlds. There is a profound sense of stability in this perspective. It shows us that we are supported by miles of solid, ancient history. To look at Smith's map is to feel the immense weight and durability of the planet beneath our feet, a deep geological silence that provides a permanent foundation for our fleeting surface lives. As you contemplate those deep, colourful layers of stone, let your own mind sink down, layer by layer, into a state of profound rest. The surface worries of the day are like the topsoil, thin, light, and easily blown away. Beneath them lies the solid bedrock of your own peace, a deep, unshakable foundation that has been there all along. You can rest heavily and safely upon this inner geography, knowing that it is permanent and entirely secure. Our journey through these ancient maps finally brings us to a small, humble workshop in 19th century London, where a man named James Wilde is constructing his great globe. This was a massive hollow sphere, 60 feet in diameter, built in the middle of Leicester Square. But the true genius of Wilde's globe was that the map was not on the outside, it was on the inside. Visitors would walk into the centre of the globe and look up at the continents and oceans curving around them. It was a map that completely enveloped the viewer. Standing inside the great globe, you were at the very heart of the world. The geography was not something you looked at from a distance. It was something that surrounded you, a vast protective shell of knowledge and wonder. It is the perfect final image for our journey. A map that is not a cold document, but a warm, immersive experience. It reminds us that we are never separate from the world. We are always at its centre, held within its great curving embrace, a part of its eternal silent story. And as the image of that great hollow globe begins to rotate slowly in the darkness, the continents and oceans blur into a single, soft and comforting shade of deep blue. The lines of the maps dissolve, the ink fades, and the parchment becomes as soft as the air itself. You have reached the end of the charted world and the beginning of the vast, peaceful ocean of sleep. The journey is complete. You are home. You are safe. You can let go now and drift away into the quiet, boundless horizon of your dreams. As you rest softly upon that quiet, boundless horizon, the endless blue of the sleep world slowly begins to organize itself into gentle, perfect ripples. Imagine dropping a single, smooth pebble into a perfectly still pond, watching the perfectly concentric circles radiate softly outward. This beautiful, balanced geometry is the foundation of the Chonhado, a stunning type of ancient Korean map created during the Joseon dynasty. The name itself translates to the map of the world beneath the heavens. It does not attempt to show the jagged, chaotic coastlines of the physical earth. Instead, drawn gracefully on smooth, delicate mulberry paper, it depicts the world as a series of perfect, harmonious rings. Right in the very centre lies a mythical inner continent, representing the known world, completely surrounded by a calm, painted inner sea. Beyond that water lies another perfect ring of land, an outer continent of Taoist mythology, which is in turn wrapped safely by a final vast outer sea. It is a map of profound, meditative containment. It draws the wandering eye continuously inward from the vast, unknown edges of the universe, right down into the quiet, protected centre. It is a visual representation of a mind softly gathering itself, pulling away from the distractions of the outer edges and finding a deep, unshakable stillness right in the middle of the world. Those gentle, painted ripples of the inner sea slowly begin to cool, the temperature of the air dropping into a crisp, refreshing and deeply peaceful chill. The smooth mulberry paper gradually thickens, transforming into a massive, heavy block of carved wood. We have travelled far to the north, to the year 1539, where the Swedish scholar Olaus Magnus is meticulously carving the Carta Marina. This magnificent, sprawling woodblock print was one of the very first maps to capture the terrifying, beautiful majesty of the frozen north. Before this, the Arctic was merely a blank, frightening void on the edges of European maps. But Magnus filled the cold waters with incredible, vibrant life. He carved towering, swirling whirlpools, magnificent, sweeping sea monsters resting in the deep water, and most beautifully, tiny, bundled figures driving horse-drawn sleighs directly across the frozen surface of the Gulf of Bothnia. Looking at the incredibly fine, intricately carved lines of the ice, you can almost hear the soft, rhythmic crunch of snow under wooden runners and feel the bracing, pure, crystal-clear air filling your lungs. It is a deeply soothing realization that even the coldest, most forbidding and isolated corners of our planet are teeming with life, activity, and their own unique, quiet beauty, all waiting patiently under a soft blanket of white snow. The freezing, pale ice of the northern sea solidifies completely, growing heavier and darker until it transforms into a solid, cool, and perfectly smooth plate of heavy metal. In the dimly lit workshops of the early 15th century, a master artisan created what is now known as the Borgia map. This map was not drawn with a fragile quill or painted with soft brushes. It was painstakingly engraved directly into a massive heavy sheet of pure copper. To make the incredibly detailed rivers, mountains and cities visible, the artisan used an ancient, beautiful technique called niello. They took a dark, rich metallic alloy, a mixture of sulfur, silver and lead, and melted it directly into the deep grooves carved in the copper. Once it cooled, they polished the entire heavy plate until the surface was flawlessly smooth to the touch. The result is a breathtaking contrast. The warm, gleaming, golden-brown reflection of the polished copper, permanently holding the dark, matte, charcoal-black lines of the world. Imagine running your fingertips slowly over that cool, heavy metal, feeling the absolute, unyielding smoothness of the surface, knowing that the map is locked safely and permanently inside the metal itself. It is the ultimate expression of permanence, a heavy, quiet anchor in a constantly shifting world. And just as that heavy copper plate rests with absolute, immovable stillness on the artisan's wooden table, your own body can simply rest, sinking heavily and securely into the warmth of your bed. The muscles loosen, mimicking the smooth, polished surface of the metal. There is nothing you need to carry, nothing you need to hold up. The world will stay exactly where it is, safely engraved in the quiet dark. From the heavy, permanent weight of copper, the map of the world suddenly becomes completely weightless, transforming into something held entirely within the quiet architecture of human memory. In the year 1769, a majestic, creaking wooden ship called the Endeavour sailed through the deep, warm, rolling waves of the Pacific Ocean. Aboard was Captain James Cook, but more importantly, a brilliant Tahitian priest and navigator named Tupaia. Tupaia was given a massive blank sheet of European drafting paper and a quill. Sitting quietly in the gently rocking wooden cabin of the ship, without any compasses, sextants or printed charts, Tupaia drew a map of the Pacific Ocean spanning a mind-boggling 3,000-mile radius. He drew from pure, unwritten memory. He seamlessly translated the ancient, invisible Polynesian knowledge of star paths, ocean swells, and bird migrations into the static, permanent ink of a European map. He placed over 70 distant, hidden islands in their correct relative positions, drawing a vast, sprawling archipelago of safe harbours that the Europeans had never even imagined. It is profoundly moving to consider the sheer capacity of the resting human mind. Long before the ink ever touched the dry paper, that entire, massive, beautiful ocean, with all its islands and currents, existed completely and peacefully within the quiet, expansive space of one man's imagination. The vast, sweeping size of that Pacific map gently begins to soften at its edges, the rigid rectangular shape of the European paper curving gracefully inward. We drift back to the sun-drenched, bustling docks of Italy in the year 1457, where an unknown cartographer created the magnificent Genoese map. For centuries, mapmakers had forced the geography of the Earth into strict, perfect circles, or harsh, rigid rectangles. But the creator of the Genoese map chose a shape that is deeply, inherently soothing to the human eye. They drew the world within a perfectly proportioned almond shape, a sacred geometric form known as the vesica piscis. The edges of the world do not drop off abruptly, nor do they form a strict, inescapable ring. Instead, the borders of the parchment taper softly and gently at the far east and the far west, mimicking the elegant, sweeping curve of an opening seed or the gentle arc of a resting leaf. When you look quietly at the Genoese map, the shape itself induces a feeling of deep relaxation. It looks exactly like a heavy, tired eye, slowly and peacefully closing at the end of a long, beautiful day. It is a geography that invites rest, suggesting that the very shape of the universe is inherently soft, yielding, and ready for sleep. As that drawn eye slowly closes, we descend from the abstract geometry of the mind directly down into the rich, dark, fragrant soil of the earth itself. The paper fades away, replaced once again by the heavy, enduring weight of ancient metal, but this time it is buried deep underground. During the height of the Roman Empire, the land surrounding the city of Orange in modern-day France was meticulously surveyed, and divided into a vast, perfect agricultural grid. To ensure this peaceful order lasted forever, the Romans carved the entire map into massive heavy bronze tablets known as a cadaster. These were not maps for travellers, they were maps of quiet rural belonging, marking the permanent boundaries of quiet farms, winding stone walls and deep water wells. But as the centuries slowly passed and the empire faded into quiet history, these heavy bronze maps were broken and swallowed by the soft, shifting earth. They rested in the total, absolute silence of the underground for nearly 2,000 years, sleeping comfortably beneath the very fields they were designed to measure. There is a deep, resonant poetry in this. The map eventually returned to the land, resting quietly in the dark, cool dirt, a permanent memory of order sleeping soundly beneath the roots of the growing grass. And just as those heavy bronze tablets sleep undisturbed in the cool, dark earth, your mind can simply rest in the quiet sanctuary of the present moment. There is no need to dig up the past, and no need to survey the future. Everything that matters is already safely grounded, resting peacefully in the dark. From the buried, sleeping bronze, we move softly to a map that was not hidden by time, but hidden deliberately in the shadows of a long, quiet journey. In the year 1502, an Italian spy named Alberto Cantino walked silently through the vibrant, sunlit streets of Lisbon, Portugal. He carried with him a tightly rolled, breathtakingly beautiful map, secretly commissioned from a master Portuguese cartographer. This map, known today as the Cantino Planisphere, contained the most closely guarded, explosive geographic secrets of the age, including the newly discovered sweeping coastline of Brazil and the exact placement of the invisible line that divided the globe between two massive empires. But the true beauty of this moment lies in its quiet transit. Cantino slipped this massive, brilliantly illuminated parchment, glowing with crushed gold leaf, lapis lazuli oceans and bright crimson parrots, deep into the dark, protective confines of a leather saddlebag. For months, as he rode slowly back to Italy, the most vibrant, cutting-edge portrait of the Earth rested in total, absolute darkness. You can almost smell the rich, worn leather of the bag and hear the slow, rhythmic, hypnotic clopping of the horse's hooves. It is a beautiful contrast. The entire bright, sprawling, colourful world, folded up securely and resting quietly in the dark, waiting patiently for the moment it would finally be unrolled into the light. When that hidden parchment is finally unrolled, the rigid political lines of the continent softly wash away, dissolving into a sweeping, elegant flow of delicate watercolours. We find ourselves looking down at the magnificent Selden map of China, painted in the early 17th century and rediscovered resting quietly in the dusty archives of Oxford University. What makes this map so extraordinarily peaceful is its gentle shift in focus. Almost every other map of the era centred heavily on the massive, immovable rock and soil of the continents. But the unknown artist of the Selden map pushed the great landmass of China to the very top and left edges of the paper. They dedicated the vast, beautiful centre of the map entirely to the open water of the South China Sea. They painted the delicate, winding trade routes not as strict mathematical grids, but as soft, sweeping organic lines that look like the gentle stems of a climbing vine, bending gracefully with the invisible, seasonal flow of the monsoon winds. The ocean is painted with soft, translucent botanical dyes, giving the entire map the feeling of a quiet, floating dream. It is a cartography of pure connection, teaching us that the world is defined not by the static, heavy walls that divide us, but by the fluid, flowing waters that gently carry us toward one another. To truly understand the vastness of those connections, we must slowly rise up from the flowing waters, lifting higher and higher into the crisp, cool and perfectly silent air of the mountain tops. Throughout the entire 18th century, an extraordinary family named Cassini undertook a project of unimaginable quiet patience. For 4 consecutive generations, fathers passing the work gently down to their sons, they set out to create the very first perfectly accurate geometric map of the entire nation of France. They did not do this by walking the winding roads. They did it by climbing up into the sky. They hauled heavy, polished brass telescopes and delicate surveying instruments up the twisting stone staircases of ancient church spires and to the silent, windswept peaks of the highest mountains. Standing in the cool, high-altitude air, they would close one eye, peer softly through the glass lens, and find another distant spire miles away, drawing an invisible, perfect triangle of light across the landscape. They covered the entire country in a quiet, invisible net of mathematics. There is a profound, resting peace in the thought of that generational patience. To spend your entire life standing quietly above the noise of the world, looking through a polished brass lens, making perfect, silent measurements of the earth, and leaving behind a flawless geometric legacy for the generations yet to come. From those high, solitary mountain peaks in Europe, our perspective expands outward, widening the horizon until it encompasses the entire globe in a single, harmonious embrace. In the year 1602, a Jesuit scholar named Matteo Ricci worked alongside brilliant Chinese artisans in Beijing to create the Kunyu Wangguo Quantu, a map of the myriad countries of the world. This masterpiece was not printed on a single small sheet. It was carved into heavy wood blocks and printed across 6 massive, towering panels of incredibly fine, translucent rice paper. But the most profound, deeply calming choice Ricci made was how he centered the image. European maps traditionally placed their own small continent exactly in the middle. But Ricci, seeking to bridge 2 vastly different cultures, shifted the entire perspective of the globe. He placed the massive, quiet and boundless expanse of the Pacific Ocean right in the very center of the map, allowing the coastlines of Asia and the Americas to rest gently on either side. By simply shifting the center, he harmonized the Western geographic knowledge with the ancient Chinese philosophy of being the Middle Kingdom. It is a magnificent, towering testament to the power of shifting our perspective. It proves that there is no single, rigid center to the world. We can always adjust our view, shift our focus, and find a new, beautiful balance that accommodates everything and everyone. As the image of those 6 massive, delicate panels of rice paper softly sways in the quiet air of your imagination, the vast, centered ocean of that map begins to merge with the deep, quiet center of your own resting mind. The boundaries of the old world are continually softening, melting into the gentle, rhythmic rising and falling of your breath. The journey continues ever deeper, carrying us gently away from the known shores and softly outward toward the beautiful, uncharted stillness of the ancient night. As we drift further into that quiet, starlit dark, the cool night air slowly replaces the damp scent of the ocean. Imagine stepping quietly into a perfectly still subterranean chamber, carved deep into the dry, protective rock of the Egyptian desert. This is the quiet resting place of Senenmut, an architect and astronomer who lived over 3,400 years ago. When you look up in this quiet room, you do not see the rough, unfinished stone of the cavern roof. Instead, you are enveloped by the oldest known map of the night sky in human history. The ceiling is meticulously painted with a beautiful, intricate diagram of the heavens, charting the movement of the specific groups of stars that the ancient Egyptians used to measure the slow, quiet passage of the night. But this map was absolutely not created for the living to navigate ships across the sea, or to guide weary caravans across the shifting desert sands. It was painted to provide a permanent, peaceful, and perfectly predictable sky for a sleeping soul. It is a map designed entirely for eternity. Looking up at those softly painted stars, you can feel the profound, enduring stillness of the tomb. It is a beautiful, comforting thought that the ancients loved the night sky so deeply, they chose to wrap themselves in its quiet, dark embrace forever, ensuring that even in the longest sleep, they would never be without the gentle guidance of the stars. Slowly lowering our gaze from those eternal painted heavens, our focus gently returns to the warm, tactile surface of the earth. We find ourselves in the ancient, sun-baked plains of Mesopotamia, holding something incredibly small, heavy, and unassuming. It is the Nutsi map, a small tablet of hardened clay created more than 4,000 years ago, predating almost all other known maps of the physical world. It is beautifully small, resting effortlessly in the palm of a single hand. When you trace the faint, delicate impressions pressed softly into the clay, you're not looking at a sprawling empire or a grand mythical cosmos. You're looking at a quiet, intimate portrait of a single agricultural estate. The ancient scribe carefully drew two gentle rolling mountain ranges, and running peacefully right through the centre of the valley, a single, flowing river. It marks the location of quiet, tended fields and a small, sleeping town. There is a profound, grounding comfort in this tiny piece of earth. Long before humanity felt the overwhelming need to map the vast, terrifying oceans or the edges of the continents, our very first cartographic instinct was simply to map a quiet valley. It is a celebration of the microgeography of a peaceful life, a gentle reminder that the most important centre of the universe is often just a small, quiet patch of earth where the soil is good, the water is cool, and the harvest is safe. Notice how your own focus naturally begins to narrow, gently mirroring the small, intimate scale of that ancient clay tablet. The vast, loud world outside your room is entirely irrelevant right now. You're perfectly safe in your own quiet space, resting comfortably in the centre of your own small, peaceful valley. As that small clay tablet rests warmly in your palm, its texture slowly begins to change. The coarse, dusty earth hardens, cools, and transforms into a thin, wonderfully smooth, and flexible sheet of cold metal. You're holding the copper scroll, a truly unique artifact discovered perfectly preserved within the quiet, shadowy caves of Qumran, near the still, salty waters of the Dead Sea. Unlike the fragile papyrus and dry animal skins found beside it, this scroll was etched entirely into pure, heavy copper. And it is not a map of twisting borders or painted rivers. It is a map constructed entirely out of words. The ancient metal is covered in meticulously hammered script, describing the exact hidden locations of vast, unimaginable treasures of gold and silver tucked away in the quiet desert landscape. It speaks softly of secret subterranean caverns, hidden aqueducts, and deep, cool water wells. But the most deeply soothing aspect of the copper scroll is the sheer permanence of its secret. The people who made it wanted their treasures to sleep undisturbed in the dark for centuries. They chose the most durable, enduring material they could find, turning the map itself into a heavy treasure. It evokes the deeply relaxing idea of precious things resting silently in the earth, completely hidden from the noise and rush of the surface world, safe in the cool, unyielding embrace of the rock. That heavy, cold metal slowly warms and melts, flowing gracefully into the lush, vibrant and incredibly colourful pages of an 11th century Arabic manuscript known beautifully as the Book of Curiosities. Created in the quiet scholarly halls of Fatimid Egypt, this manuscript offers a vision of the earth that is both utterly strange and deeply, profoundly peaceful, carrying the faint scent of ancient pigments and bound leather. When you turn the heavy painted pages to view the map of the world, you do not see a sphere, a globe, or a perfectly symmetrical circle. Instead, the entire known world is drawn as a magnificent, calm rectangle. The vast, flowing seas are painted in bold, sweeping strokes of thick, dark blue ink, while the islands are depicted as simple, bright geometric jewels, perfect circles, ovals and squares floating softly in the water. It completely abandons the chaotic, jagged reality of actual coastlines in favour of pure, harmonious design. It is deeply soothing because it breaks all the visual rules we have been trained to expect. It gently reminds us that there is absolutely no single, rigid way to view reality. The world does not have to be an overwhelming, chaotic mess. It can be whatever shape brings us the most peace, the most harmony, and the most comfort. It is a painted world that invites you to simply look, breathe, and appreciate the colour. That calming rectangular frame slowly begins to bow outward at the edges, bending and stretching until it forms a series of flawless, infinite, and mesmerising rings. We have entered the magnificent, highly symbolic cartography of ancient Jain cosmology, gazing down upon the Jambudvipa, the map of the cosmic island. In this breathtakingly beautiful vision, the universe is depicted as a massive, perfectly flat disk, comprised of alternating concentric circles of land and water. But these are not ordinary cold oceans of salt water. The ancient artists mapped a geography of pure sensory comfort. Moving outward from the centre, a traveller would cross an ocean of crystal clear water, followed by an ocean of sweet, rich sugarcane juice, and eventually arrive at a vast, glowing ocean of pure, calm white milk. To look at this map is to experience a landscape built entirely out of nourishment and tranquility. It replaces the harsh, freezing depths of the real oceans with the gentle, sweet and maternal peace of a dream. It is an architecture of total comfort, a universe where the very waters are designed to soothe, to nourish, and to heal. As the thought of those soft, sweet oceans ripples gently through your mind, allow your own body to feel just as fluid and relaxed. The tension in your shoulders, the weight of the day, it can all simply dissolve into the quiet, warm current. Everything is flowing exactly as it should. The infinite concentric rings of the cosmos slowly tighten, solidifying into the intricate, polished wooden framework of a magnificent 16th century Italian invention. In the bustling artistic city of Milan, a scholar named Urbano Monte spent years sitting quietly at his desk, hand-drawing an absolutely massive, breathtakingly detailed map of the entire world. He drew this masterpiece across 60 separate heavy sheets of paper. When perfectly assembled, they formed a colossal 10-foot-wide circular planisphere, with the quiet, frozen North Pole sitting precisely in the centre, and the continents radiating gracefully outward. But Monti did not intend for his map to be hung statically on a wall. He designed it to be mounted flat on a central wooden pivot, so that the entire massive image of the world could be gently, smoothly spun by hand. It is a stunning, deeply relaxing concept. The viewer does not have to move. You do not have to pace back and forth to see the distant corners of the earth. You simply stand perfectly still in the quiet room, reach out your hand, and let the soft, rhythmic rotation of the wooden wheel bring the continents, the oceans, and the winding rivers safely and effortlessly to you. The world turns, while you remain at total peace in the centre. As that grand, painted wheel slowly spins to a stop, the physical lines of the continents begin to fade, revealing the deep, invisible and silent forces that actually guide the turning world. In the early 18th century, the brilliant astronomer Edmund Halley created a completely new kind of chart. He did not map the dirt, the rock or the water, he mapped the invisible magnetic pull of the Earth itself. Sailing across the vast, empty Atlantic Ocean, Halley carefully measured how the compass needle behaved. He then drew long, graceful, swooping curves across the blank parchment, lines he called isogonic lines. These beautiful, sweeping arcs showed exactly where, and by how much, a magnetic compass would wander away from true north. Looking at Halley's map is like looking at the wind. He captured an invisible protective force field and made it visible. There is a profound, comforting reassurance in this image. It is a beautiful reminder that there are gentle, invisible forces constantly surrounding us in the dark, safely guiding us, connecting us, and pulling us in the right direction, even when the night is completely black and we cannot see the shore. Those invisible, swooping magnetic lines in the air slowly descend, touching the restless surface of the sea and sinking softly into the deep. A century and a half after Halley, an oceanographer named Matthew Fontaine-Maury realised that the chaotic, seemingly random oceans possessed their own hidden, beautiful order. In the middle of the 19th century, he published a map detailing the powerful, quiet currents flowing ceaselessly beneath the waves. He famously and poetically described the massive Gulf Stream as a river in the ocean. He mapped it as a massive, warm, flowing ribbon of deep blue water, completely surrounded by walls of cold water, flowing eternally across the globe without ever truly mixing. It is an incredibly soothing, hypnotic image to hold in your mind. A secret, warm river flowing safely and steadily right through the middle of the freezing depths. It suggests that even in the most vast, indifferent and overwhelming environments, there are hidden paths of warmth and safety. A protected, flowing sanctuary within the sea, moving with quiet, unstoppable purpose, carrying life gently from one side of the world to the other. The warm, dark waters of that hidden ocean current perfectly reflect the glowing silver light of the night sky, drawing our gaze slowly upward once again. In 1647, a Polish astronomer named Johannes Hevelius published the Selenographia, a breathtakingly beautiful and completely unprecedented atlas of the moon. Sitting night after night in his quiet, cold observatory, feeling the cool touch of the brass eyepiece, Hevelius painstakingly engraved the shadows of lunar craters, the jagged edges of silent mountains, and the vast, dark plains that he affectionately named the Maria, or the lunar seas. He mapped a world defined by absolute perfect silence. When you look at his intricate copper engravings of the moon, you're looking at a landscape where there is no rushing wind, no crashing waves, and no chaotic noise of any kind. It is a serene, completely still world, resting softly in the velvet dark of space. The light never flickers, the dust never blows. It is the ultimate geography of peace, a quiet, glowing pearl suspended perfectly above the earth, watching over us while we sleep. Let that absolute, perfect lunar silence fill the room around you. There is nothing left to do. The heavy machinery of the day has completely shut down. The world has quieted down to a soft silver whisper. From that silent silver moon, we step even further back, letting our eyes adjust to the deepest, darkest corners of the night. In the late 18th century, the astronomer William Herschel, working alongside his devoted sister Caroline, set out to achieve the impossible, to map the actual physical shape of our entire galaxy. They did not accomplish this by moving or by making grand calculations on a chalkboard. They did it by sitting perfectly still. Night after quiet night, in the deep silence of their dark garden, they would point a massive telescope at different patches of the sky and simply, peacefully, count the individual glowing stars. From this slow, rhythmic, meditative counting, Herschel drew the very first map of the Milky Way. He depicted our galaxy not as a perfect, mathematically rigid circle, but as a beautiful, irregular, jagged shape, resembling a luminous piece of ancient flint, or the organic, glowing cross-section of a magnificent tree. It is the ultimate map of belonging. It shows exactly where our tiny, quiet solar system rests, within the unimaginably vast, sparkling city of stars. It brings a profound feeling of being safely tucked in, an infinitesimal, quiet, but entirely necessary part of a grand, eternally sleeping universe. As the image of that glowing, irregular galaxy slowly rotates in the deep velvet black of your mind, the incredible distances soften and blur, pulling us back toward the gentle mysteries resting comfortably in our own world. As that glowing, irregular galaxy of stars slowly dissolves in the mind, imagine its silver light falling quietly onto the damp, freshly turned soil of a farmer's field in northern Italy. Here, resting completely silent in the earth for over 2,000 years, was a map unlike any other. It was not drawn on parchment or carved into a grand temple wall. It was a heavy, hand-sized object forged entirely of cool, solid bronze, known today as the Piacenza liver. Created by the ancient Etruscans, this heavy, beautifully oxidized artifact is a life-sized, perfect anatomical model of a sheep's liver, divided by its makers into 40 distinct, meticulously engraved sections. But it is not a medical model, it is a map of the heavens. The Etruscan priests believed with absolute certainty in the profound harmony of the universe, a concept where the microcosm perfectly mirrored the macrocosm. They believed the vast, sweeping architecture of the night sky, with all its distant gods and swirling constellations, was reflected perfectly and silently in the quiet anatomy of the natural world. To hold the Piacenza liver is to hold a beautiful, comforting philosophy. It suggests that the overwhelming, infinite scale of the universe is intimately connected to the smallest, quietest things on Earth. The entire cosmos can be gently folded down, mapped onto a small piece of bronze, and carried safely in the palm of your hand. From the cool, heavy bronze resting in the soil, our gaze lifts slowly upward, trading the dirt of Italy for the warm, dry sandstone of ancient Egypt. High above the stone pillars of the Hathor temple complex, hidden in a small, quiet rooftop chapel, is another map that sought to capture the eternal turning of the sky. This is the Dendera zodiac, a massive circular bas-relief carved deeply into the stone ceiling. Unlike the square grids of modern star charts, the Egyptian artisans carved the night sky as a perfect, flawless wheel. Surrounding this grand wheel are the beautifully sculpted figures of 4 women and 8 kneeling, falcon-headed spirits, holding the entire weight of the cosmos effortlessly upon their raised hands. Inside the circle, the stars are represented by a slow, endless procession of figures, the ram, the bull, the scorpion, marching in a quiet, eternal circle. When you stand in that cool, shadowed temple and look up, you do not feel the chaotic rush of time passing. You feel the profound, resting permanence of a cycle. The Dendera zodiac maps a universe that never truly ends and never truly begins. It simply turns, softly and predictably, offering a deep rhythmic comfort to anyone standing quietly beneath it. That perfect, slow-turning circle of the ancient sky gently flattens out, descending to Earth to become a flawless, absolutely precise grid resting on a polished wooden drafting table. In the year 1502, the Renaissance genius Leonardo da Vinci sat in a quiet room, tasked with mapping the fortified Italian city of Imola. For centuries, map makers had drawn cities as if standing on a nearby hill, sketching the sides of buildings and the sloping roofs, resulting in beautiful but cluttered panoramas. Da Vinci chose a perspective of total, absolute peace. He imagined his mind lifting free from the heavy earth, floating directly above the city like a silent bird. He created what is considered the first iconographic map, a true, geometric bird's-eye view. Every single winding street, every thick defensive wall and every quiet courtyard is drawn perfectly flat, exactly to scale, mapping the negative space as beautifully as the stone itself. Looking at Da Vinci's Imola is incredibly soothing. It takes a loud, chaotic, bustling city filled with noise and dust, and quietly distills it into an image of perfect, silent harmony. The chaotic maze of human life is magically resolved into a clean, beautiful geometry, suggesting that if we can just lift our perspective high enough, we will see the perfect underlying order of things. As your mind embraces that perfect, silent geometry, notice how the tension in your own muscles begins to follow suit, gently unwinding and laying completely flat. The chaotic thoughts of the day are softening, yielding to the comfortable, ordered stillness of the night. The breathing slows, finding its own perfect, regular rhythm, matching the steady, measured lines of a master's pen. The sharp, dark ink of the Renaissance softly fades, replaced by the incredibly gentle, natural texture of pale, peeling bark. In the deep, quiet, endless green forests of North America, indigenous map makers, such as the Ojibwe and the Algonquian peoples, created extraordinary maps that were never meant to be permanent. They used the soft, pliant inner bark of the paper birch tree. Using a dull bone or a piece of hard wood, they would gently press lines directly into the grain of the bark, mapping the intricate, winding systems of the great rivers, the hidden portages between lakes, and the safe, quiet camping grounds. These birch bark scrolls were incredibly light, easily rolled up and slipped into a leather pouch. But the most beautiful aspect of these maps is their intentional impermanence. They were not heavy bronze meant to last millennia, nor were they stone carved for eternity. They were temporary notes passed between travellers. When the map was no longer needed, it was simply left on the forest floor, where the soft rains and the autumn leaves would gently dissolve it back into the earth. It is a profoundly relaxing cartographic philosophy. A map does not need to conquer time. It is perfectly okay to use the knowledge you need for the journey, and then peacefully let it go, allowing it to gently return to the quiet soil. The soft, earthy scent of the birch forest is suddenly lifted by a cool, steady breeze, carrying us out over the vast, open expanse of the ocean. In the year 1686, the brilliant astronomer Edmund Halley decided to map something that no one had ever truly mapped before. He chose to map the invisible. Halley created the first meteorological chart, focusing entirely on the vast, sweeping oceanic trade winds. But how do you draw the wind? He did not use harsh, heavy lines. Instead, he covered the pale parchment of the oceans with thousands of tiny, delicate dash strokes, shaped almost like miniature falling comets. They gently curve and flow across the Atlantic and the Pacific, showing the exact direction of the seasonal breezes. When you look at Halley's map, the continents themselves fade into the background. The Earth ceases to be a sphere of solid rock and becomes a living, breathing entity. The thousands of tiny dashed lines look exactly like the slow, rhythmic exhalations of a sleeping planet. It is a mesmerizing, hypnotic visual, a map that allows you to actually see the soft, invisible breath of the world flowing endlessly over the quiet, dark water. Drifting effortlessly on those painted, invisible winds, our minds are carried across the ancient world to the warm, glittering waters of the Indian Ocean. If we look at the maps created by the ancient Greek geographer Ptolemy, there is a magnificent, glaring inaccuracy that is deeply revealing about the human heart. Off the southern coast of India lies the island of Sri Lanka, which the ancient Greeks called Taprobane. But on these ancient maps, Taprobane is not drawn as a small teardrop island. It is drawn as an absolute behemoth, a massive, sprawling continent that stretches wildly across the equator, taking up almost the entire right side of the known ocean. The ancient map makers knew the mathematical measurements were wrong, but they drew it this way because of the sheer, irresistible gravity of the island's reputation. Taprobane was the legendary source of fine silks, brilliant red rubies, fragrant cinnamon, and massive, gentle elephants. Its cultural and economic importance was so vast, so heavy with human desire and wonder, that it physically swelled the ink on the parchment. It is a beautiful, comforting distortion. It shows us that in the landscape of human memory, the size of a place is not determined by its physical miles, but by the weight of its beauty, its mystery, and the dreams it inspires in the quiet minds of travellers. Just as that island expanded to hold the dreams of the ancient world, your own mind is expanding now, creating a vast, soft, and limitless space where your own dreams can safely unfold. There are no strict borders here, no rigid measurements to follow. The mind is free to stretch out and rest in whatever shape feels most peaceful. The exaggerated curves of that massive island gently straighten out, pulling taut into a series of perfectly parallel intersecting lines. In 1569, a Flemish cartographer named Gerardus Mercator published a map that would permanently change the way humans navigated the deep ocean. He created the Mercator projection. To look at it, the world seems strangely distorted at the top and the bottom, stretching the ice of the poles outward. But Mercator did not care about showing the exact physical size of the land. He cared entirely about the peace of mind of the weary sailor. By mathematically stretching the map, he created a world where a rhumb line, a line of constant compass bearing, could be drawn as a perfectly straight line with a wooden ruler. Before this, navigating a curved globe meant a captain had to constantly, exhaustingly calculate and correct their course in the middle of terrifying storms. Mercator's map offered a profound mathematical resting place. A sailor could draw a single straight line across the paper ocean, lock the heavy wooden wheel of the ship into place, and simply let the wind do the work. The map absorbed the complex, exhausting mathematics of the sphere, allowing the tired human at the helm to finally find a moment of quiet, straightforward peace. The straight mathematical lines of the sailor's chart soften and blur, blending into the rich, heavy atmosphere of a magnificent, quiet French chateau. In the year 1550, the royal cartographer Pierre de Sellier painted a breathtakingly beautiful map of the world, known simply as the Mappa Monde. This was an absolutely massive, sprawling piece of parchment, far too large to be hung on any wall. It was specifically designed to be laid completely flat on a grand wooden table in the centre of a quiet library. Because of this, de Sellier did something wonderfully unique. He painted the map without any fixed top or bottom. If you look at the northern hemisphere, the finely painted kings, the delicate castles, and the flowing calligraphy are oriented in one direction. But if you look at the southern hemisphere, the text and the artwork are completely upside down. It is a map that gently refuses to dictate a single perspective. To read it, you cannot sit still in a chair. You must slowly, quietly, walk around the heavy table, pacing in a calm, meditative circle, shifting your physical orientation to meet the artwork. It is a beautifully democratic geography, whispering the comforting truth that the world looks perfectly right and beautifully complete, no matter which side of the table you happen to be standing on. The massive parchment on the table slowly begins to fold, gathering its vast painted edges inward until it is bound tightly between two heavy, magnificent covers. We transition to the wealthy, rain-swept streets of 17th century Amsterdam, entering the quiet, wealthy study of a merchant holding the Bleu Atlas Maya. This was not a single map, but an 11-volume masterpiece, universally recognised as the largest and most expensive book published in the entire 17th century. It is an object of profound, heavy luxury. The pages were incredibly thick. The maps were meticulously hand-painted with brilliant jewel-toned watercolours, and the heavy covers were bound in deep, soft velvet and stamped with real gold. This was absolutely not a map designed to be taken out into the cold rain, the mud, or the salty spray of a ship. It was a map designed entirely for the warmth of the home. It represents the deep human joy of armchair travel. Imagine sitting in a heavy leather chair beside a quietly crackling fire, the storm raging helplessly outside the thick glass windows, while you rest this massive velvet-bound world securely on your lap. It is the cartography of total comfort, a way to safely possess the vast, wild and dangerous world while remaining perfectly warm, safe, and entirely at rest. As the heavy velvet cover of that great atlas slowly, softly closes, the golden light of the fire flickers and dims, casting our gaze out over an ocean that hides the oldest, quietest secret of all. In the year 1669, the brilliant and eccentric scholar Athanasius Kircher published a map of a place that no longer existed. He mapped the lost sleeping island of Atlantis. Kircher did not draw a mythical land floating in the clouds. He drew a very real-looking island complete with quiet mountain ranges, gentle rivers, and sweeping bays, resting perfectly alone in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. But to view Kircher's map is to experience a beautifully disorienting shift. He placed the south at the very top of the page and the north at the bottom. To modern eyes, the world seems gently inverted, suspended upside down. Yet, the island of Atlantis sits exactly in the centre, perfectly balanced in the dark ink of the sea. It is the ultimate map of sleep. It depicts a world that has already surrendered to the quiet depth of the ocean, a massive, peaceful continent resting silently and forever under the heavy, dark blanket of the water. There is no more history to be made there, no more cities to build, no more noise, just the eternal gentle wash of the deep sea currents passing softly over the drowned mountaintops. And as we imagine that silent, submerged world, resting so peacefully in the deepest blue of the ancient ocean, the waters above it grow incredibly calm, smoothing out into a perfect dark mirror, ready to reflect the next quiet chapter of human memory. Look down into that perfect dark mirror of the water, and watch as the reflection slowly brightens, transforming into the soft, vibrant greens and pale, tranquil blues of the ancient Valley of Mexico. In the mid-16th century, indigenous artists created an extraordinarily peaceful vision of their home, known today as the Uppsala map. It does not show a harsh, rigidly organised grid, but rather a vast watery world where the land and the lake seamlessly, beautifully intertwine. The map is centred on the island city of Tenochtitlan, but what is most deeply calming is the loving attention given to the surrounding waters. The artist delicately painted hundreds of tiny, quiet canoes gliding silently across the smooth surface of Lake Texcoco. They mapped the chinampas, the brilliant floating agricultural gardens that gently bobbed on the water's edge, overflowing with fresh green maize and blooming flowers. To look at the Uppsala map is to look at a society living in perfect, fluid harmony with the water. It is a geography without sharp edges, where the roads are simply calm, blue canals, and the journey from one place to another is measured by the slow, rhythmic, splashing dip of a wooden paddle. The gentle lapping sound of those painted waters smoothly transitions into the soft, sweeping brushstrokes of the Italian Renaissance. Water, after all, is never truly still. It is the restless, roaming memory of the earth. In the year 1502, the great Leonardo da Vinci was asked to map the Chiana Valley in Tuscany. Instead of using the dry, heavy geometry of traditional surveyors, Da Vinci used delicate, transparent washes of blue, green and sepia watercolour. He drew the winding rivers and the sprawling, marshy lakes as if they were the literal pulsing veins and arteries of a living creature. From his imagined bird's-eye view, the surrounding mountains look exactly like the soft, rolling muscles of a breathing body. Da Vinci believed that the earth was a macrocosm of the human form, and his map beautifully reflects this comforting philosophy. He captured the deep, organic unity of the landscape, suggesting that the dirt, the stone and the water are not dead, silent things, but parts of a warm, living entity that is quietly, eternally resting beneath our feet. That long, silken river of Tuscan watercolour gently rolls eastward, merging beautifully with the massive golden currents of the ancient Chinese landscape. During the Qing dynasty, cartographers mapped the monumental, sprawling journey of the Yellow River, but they did not do it on a single square page. They painted the river onto magnificent, incredibly long scrolls of fine silk, some measuring over 50 feet in length. To read the map of the Yellow River, you could not look at the whole world at once. You had to sit quietly at a wooden table, gently unrolling the scroll with your left hand while softly rolling it up with your right. The geography was revealed slowly, intimately, revealing just an arm's length of the world at any given time. It transformed map reading from a static visual exercise into a slow, meditative, physical rhythm. You literally travel down the river as you turn the silk. It teaches us a deeply relaxing truth. We do not need to comprehend the entire, overwhelming length of our journey all at once. We only need to focus on the soft, painted section that is unfolding beautifully right in front of us. As that long, silken river gently rolls away, notice the steady, unhurried rhythm of your own resting breath. It mimics the slow, patient unrolling of the scroll. The heavy thoughts of the day are simply being rolled away, out of sight and out of mind, leaving only the peaceful, empty space of the present moment. You can just let the body settle, feeling completely supported, safe, and entirely at ease. The warm, golden silk of the painted river slowly cools, the air growing crisp, sharp, and brilliantly clear as we travel into the profound, absolute silence of the Canadian Arctic. In a landscape completely blanketed by blinding, featureless white snow, traditional maps made of paper are entirely useless. For thousands of years, the Inuit people mapped this frozen world using the earth itself, building magnificent stone structures known as inuksut. These are carefully balanced, heavy stacks of unhewn rock, often built in the rough, comforting shape of a standing human figure. An inuksuk is a physical, three-dimensional map anchored permanently to the land. Placed at crucial vantage points, they quietly indicate the safest route across the ice, the location of deep water, or a valley where the caribou gently graze. Standing alone in the howling wind or the perfect, freezing silence of the polar night, these stone figures offer an indescribable comfort. They are a permanent, silent message left by those who came before, standing patiently in the snow to gently reassure you. Someone has been here. You're not alone. You're exactly where you need to be. The protective shadow of those silent standing stones stretches out, leading us gently out of the freezing wind and down into the absolute warm, protective dark of a 7th century burial mound in Japan. Discovered entirely by accident, the Katora tomb is a small, quiet stone chamber that holds an astonishing secret. When archaeologists finally peered inside, they looked up at the ceiling and saw a breathtaking, glowing map of the cosmos. The ancient artists had mapped the night sky by pressing hundreds of tiny, perfect, shimmering circles of pure gold leaf directly into the plaster. These radiant golden stars were then carefully connected by incredibly fine, delicate lines of red pigment, tracing the ancient mythological constellations of the East. It is a map created purely to provide eternal comfort. The individual resting in the tomb would never have to sleep in total darkness. They were permanently blanketed by a beautiful, unchanging golden sky. It is a deeply soothing thought. The idea of capturing the vast, overwhelming infinity of space and holding it safely inside a small, quiet room, creating a permanent, peaceful night that will never fade into the harsh light of day. Yet, even in the daylight, the sky holds its own quiet, shifting mysteries. The golden light of the tomb's ceiling momentarily dims, eclipsed by a profound, sweeping shadow moving rapidly across the earth. In the year 1715, the brilliant astronomer Edmund Halley created a map that did not chart the land or the sea, but rather charted a fleeting moment of darkness. He published a map predicting the exact path of an impending total solar eclipse across the green, rolling fields of England. Before this map, eclipses were often viewed with absolute paralysing terror, seen as chaotic, frightening breaks in the natural order. But Halley mapped the shadow with beautiful mathematical precision, drawing the exact dark corridor where the sun would momentarily vanish. By printing and widely distributing this map, he transformed fear into quiet, shared wonder. People stood together in the fields, watching the shadow arrive exactly when the map promised it would. The birds quietly went to sleep in the middle of the afternoon. The temperature softly dropped, and the world rested in a brief, beautiful twilight. It is a powerful reminder that knowledge brings peace, and that even the darkest shadows follow a gentle, predictable, and perfectly natural path. As the daytime shadow softly passes, the vivid, bright colours of the world gently return, washing over a beautiful, highly unusual document from the twilight of the Roman Empire. It is called the Notitia Dignitatum, a massive, quiet registry of the entire Roman government. But what makes it a map is the breathtaking way it was illustrated. Instead of drawing the provinces of the vast empire with harsh, dividing lines or rigid borders, the artists mapped the regions using beautifully painted miniature insignias. They drew small, peaceful, stylized forts resting on green hills, and perfectly aligned rows of brightly coloured, brilliantly painted wooden shields, representing the various resting garrisons. It is a geography of pure aesthetic identity. It strips away the chaotic reality of the muddy roads and the crumbling stone walls, leaving behind only the elegant, colourful symbols of the towns. Looking at these pages is like looking at a collection of beautiful, quiet badges resting in a velvet box. It reminds us that places are not just physical locations, but hold a distinct, colourful character all their own. Just as those painted shields rest safely and quietly on the ancient parchment, you do not need to guard any borders tonight. You can gently let your own shields down. There is nothing to defend against, nothing to patrol. The mind can simply lay down its armour and rest entirely in the soft, welcoming comfort of the dark. Leaving the ancient Roman forts behind, we step away from the solid land entirely, venturing out into the deep, rolling and infinitely mysterious swells of the Atlantic Ocean. In the late 18th century, Benjamin Franklin sought to map something incredibly elusive, the massive underwater river known as the Gulf Stream. But Franklin did not use complex, heavy brass instruments to find it. He used the quiet, generational wisdom of the Nantucket whalers. These silent, observant sailors taught him how to read the subtle, shifting moods of the water. They knew they had entered the Gulf Stream not by looking at a piece of paper, but by noticing the sudden, beautiful change in the ocean's colour, from a cold, dark, unforgiving grey to a vibrant, welcoming and brilliantly clear tropical blue. They mapped the ocean by feeling the temperature of the water gently rise against the wooden hulls of their ships, and by watching for the soft, floating patches of golden seaweed resting on the surface. Franklin took their quiet, sensory observations and drew the very first map of the Gulf Stream. It is a cartography of pure feeling, mapped entirely by touch, colour and temperature, revealing a massive, warm, flowing sanctuary hidden right in the middle of the cold, deep sea. That massive, warm, flowing river is slowly, gently captured and shrunk down, pressing itself onto a single, flat sheet of pale, beautiful paper. In the early 16th century, cartographers like Martin Waldseemüller devised a wonderfully tactile, creative way to map the spherical Earth on a flat printing press. They invented map gauze. Instead of drawing the world as a rigid rectangle, they printed the map in a series of elegant, sweeping, petal-like shapes, connected exactly at the equator and tapering softly to fine points at the poles. To look at a sheet of uncut map gauze is to look at the world softly unpeeled, resting flat and vulnerable on the table. But the true relaxing magic happens when these shapes are used. You would carefully cut out the delicate paper petals, apply a thin, soft layer of glue, and gently, methodically fold them around a small wooden or papier-mâché sphere. It is the soothing, repetitive act of physically wrapping the world. Through the quiet, focused craft of your own hands, the flat, fragmented pieces of the earth are slowly brought together, seamlessly joining into a perfect, smooth and beautifully complete little globe, small enough to cradle safely in your palms. From the delicate, quiet paper sphere resting in your hands, you look slowly up through the window, your gaze settling on the most magnificent, silent sphere of all. It is the summer of 1609, and the English mathematician Thomas Harriot is standing perfectly still in his cool, dark garden. Several months before Galileo would publish his famous drawings, Harriot raised a small, simple spyglass to his eye and became the first human being to ever map the surface of the moon. He did not map mythical creatures or elaborate painted winds. He quietly, patiently drew the rough, jagged edge of the Terminator line, the soft, shifting boundary between the brilliant silver light and the absolute pitch-black shadow of the lunar craters. He mapped the sweeping, empty plains of dust, capturing a landscape of total, unreachable silence. To look at Harriot's early rough sketches is to share a moment of pure, undisturbed observational peace. He was looking at a world where no wind ever blew, no rain ever fell, and no human foot had ever stepped. It was a geography completely detached from the noise and worry of the earth, a floating silver sanctuary resting eternally in the velvet dark. And as the soft silver light of that ancient lunar map spills gently out of the past and into your room, it illuminates the incredibly deep, quiet space of your own mind. The edges of the world are entirely soft now, painted in the gentle, blurring watercolours of sleep. The journey flows steadily onward, carrying us completely away from the rigid geometry of the waking world and drifting beautifully toward the vast, open, and endlessly comforting horizons of the night. Imagine taking a small, physical piece of that sweeping night sky and holding it safely in your hands. Long before the invention of heavy glass telescopes, the indigenous navigators of ancient Hawaii found a deeply elegant, quiet way to capture the stars. They created the hoku gourd, a smooth, beautifully polished calabash with its top carefully removed. They did not carve maps into the wood. Instead, they filled the hollow, dark interior of the gourd with perfectly still, clear water. When held steady in the cool night air, the completely unruffled surface of the water became a flawless, dark mirror, perfectly reflecting the glowing constellations above. By looking down into the water, rather than staring up at the overwhelming, dizzying infinity of space, a navigator could quietly and safely measure the angles of the stars against the rim of the gourd. It is a profoundly soothing concept. They took the terrifying, infinite vastness of the universe and gently scooped it into a small, smooth wooden bowl, creating a private, pocket-sized night sky that could be rocked to sleep in the palms of their hands. The perfectly still, reflective water inside that wooden gourd gently begins to overflow, spilling softly out over the rim and splashing down onto the cool, hard surface of an ancient stone. High in the crisp, thin air of the Peruvian Andes, the Inca people carved a magnificent, heavy monument known as the Sayhuit monolith. This is not a map drawn on flat, fragile parchment. It is a massive, solid boulder of dark andesite rock, over 2 meters wide, meticulously carved into a 3-dimensional miniature landscape. The surface is completely covered in tiny, incredibly detailed stone terraces, sweeping valleys, and deep, winding irrigation channels. To read this map, the ancient priests did not use their eyes alone. They used the fluid movement of gravity. They would pour clear, cool water over the top of the stone and quietly watch exactly how the liquid flowed, pooled, and descended through the miniature mountains. It is a cartography of liquid motion. Looking at the Sayhuite stone, you can almost hear the soft, rhythmic trickling of the water, a gentle, hypnotic sound that turns the heavy, unyielding rock into a living, breathing model of the Earth's natural flow. As that water continues its slow, trickling descent, it eventually flows out into the warm, sunlit basin of the Mediterranean Sea. In the 14th century, an Italian priest named Oppicinus de Canistris sat in a quiet, shadowy room in Avignon, using rich sepia ink to draw the coastlines of Europe and North Africa. But Oppicinus did not see the world as cold, dead dirt. He experienced profound, mystical visions that allowed him to see the deep, hidden humanity resting within the geography. In his breathtakingly unique maps, the massive continents are drawn as gigantic, overlapping human figures. The sweeping coastline of Europe forms the delicate profile of a face, while the shores of North Africa form another, and the 2 massive continents lean across the water, intimately whispering to one another. He seamlessly blended the borders of countries into the soft folds of painted robes and resting hands. It is a map that completely transforms the terrifying, vast unknown of the Earth into an intimate, warm embrace, suggesting that the very shape of our world is fundamentally designed for connection and quiet companionship. Just as those painted continents lean into one soft, unending embrace, your own body can simply yield to the soft surface beneath you. Notice how the tension in your jaw can gently release, how the small muscles around your eyes can completely soften. You're held in a similar quiet embrace by the stillness of the room, safe, protected, and entirely at rest. The warm human curves of those painted coastlines gently straighten out, transforming into the thick, rhythmic and sweeping brushstrokes of classical East Asian calligraphy. In traditional Korean map-making, particularly during the Joseon dynasty, cartographers mapped the Earth using a deeply comforting philosophy of natural energy. When they drew the towering, massive mountain ranges, they did not draw them as a series of isolated, jagged and lonely peaks, the way European maps often did. Instead, they painted the Bekdudagon, the Great White Mountain Pillar. The mountains were drawn as a single, continuous, wildly branching network of thick, dark black ink. The map looks exactly like a massive, sprawling root system, or the long, heavy spine of a beautiful sleeping dragon. This style reflected the belief that the deep, vital energy of the Earth, the Qi, flowed continuously through the rock, uninterrupted by valleys or rivers. It is deeply relaxing to trace those thick, unbroken black lines with your mind, realizing that nothing in the natural world is truly separate, and that a single, quiet energy flows peacefully beneath the entire surface of the Earth. The thick, heavy spine of that painted dragon slowly narrows, shrinking down until it becomes a small, incredibly light and smooth piece of carved eucalyptus wood. In the vast, sweeping red deserts of Australia, Aboriginal peoples used message sticks, small, beautifully carved pieces of wood, completely unique to the person carrying them. While these were not geographic maps showing the exact bends of a river, they were something far more important. They were maps of trust. Etched with delicate geometric lines and often rubbed with warm, red ochre, a message stick was a physical passport of the ancient world. When a traveller carried this stick across the blistering empty plains and presented it to a neighbouring tribe, the carvings quietly mapped out their identity, their relationships, and their peaceful intentions. It guaranteed safe passage. It is a beautiful reminder that the most vital maps we carry are not the ones that show us where the mountains are, but the ones that show us how we are connected to one another, charting a safe, peaceful path through the invisible landscape of human belonging. While the wooden stick provides safe passage across the ground, the traveller's face is lifted, guided by an entirely invisible force blowing gently across the empty plains. In ancient Greece, scholars like Aristotle and Timosthenes mapped the sprawling, chaotic world not by measuring the dirt, but by naming the sky. They created the brilliant conceptual map of the 12 winds. In a world before magnetic compasses, sailors and travellers oriented themselves entirely by the distinct, recognisable character of the air. They mapped the freezing, sharp breath of Boreas from the north and the warm, damp, fog-bringing sigh of Notos from the south. To use this ancient map, you did not need to light a candle to read a piece of parchment. You only needed to close your eyes, stand perfectly still, and feel the temperature and direction of the breeze against your skin. It is the ultimate sensory cartography. It teaches us that the world is constantly communicating with us, softly pressing against our faces, offering quiet, invisible guidance if we simply take a moment to stop and feel the air. As you think about that invisible, guiding wind, bring your awareness gently to the soft, rhythmic air moving effortlessly in and out of your own lungs. It is a quiet, continuous breeze, rising and falling without any effort on your part. You do not need to control it or force it. You can simply ride its slow, calming wave, letting it carry you deeper into rest. The gentle, continuous breeze of your breath softly rustles a piece of ancient, impossibly fragile silk, buried for over 2,000 years in a dark, quiet tomb. This is the Chu silk manuscript, created in China around the 3rd century before the Common Era. What makes this delicate, fading piece of fabric so profoundly beautiful is that it does not attempt to map physical distance. It maps the slow, eternal turning of time itself. The square piece of silk is beautifully bordered by the painted, mythical figures of the 12 months, each standing quietly in their proper place. The text surrounding them details the exact correct rituals for the shifting seasons, mapping out the harmonious balance between the earth and the heavens. It was a guide to navigating the year, not the landscape. Holding the thought of this ancient silk brings a deep, abiding comfort. It is a map that guarantees that the harsh, freezing dark of winter will always, inevitably yield to the soft, warm light of spring. It charts the pure, perfect predictability of nature, a spinning wheel that turns with or without us, completely at peace. That slow, turning wheel of time carries us out of ancient China and back up into the breathtaking high-altitude air of the Andes Mountains. In the early 17th century, an indigenous Andean nobleman named Felipe Guaman Poma de Ayala sat quietly and drew a map of the mighty Inca Empire, known as the Tawantinsuyu, which translates to the realm of the four parts. Guaman Poma did not draw a modern spherical globe. He drew the entire world as a massive sweeping X, dividing the Earth into four distinct diagonal quarters, all meeting perfectly in the very centre at the golden city of Cusco. But this diagonal design was not arbitrary. The sweeping, intersecting lines of his map were designed to perfectly mirror the great, glowing, intersecting bands of the Milky Way galaxy, crossing high above in the deep night sky. The map physically grounds the stars. It is an architecture of absolute cosmic harmony, suggesting that the dirt we walk upon is an exact, loving reflection of the heavens above. As above, so below. It places humanity not on a random floating rock, but in the exact safe centre of a perfectly mirrored, perfectly balanced universe. The grand, serious cosmic weight of that perfect universe is suddenly and wonderfully lightened by the soft, jingling sound of a small brass bell. In the late 16th century, a beautifully strange and mysterious map was printed in Europe, known today as the Epinal map, or the Fool's Cap map. The artist took a highly detailed, perfectly accurate map of the entire known world and painted it directly into the open visor of a smiling resting court jester, wearing a heavy gold-trimmed cap with soft ringing bells. Below the map is a quiet Latin inscription that reads, "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." Rather than a tool for serious navigation or imperial conquest, the map is a profound piece of psychological relief. It is a beautiful, gentle joke. It whispers to the viewer that all the endless striving, all the wars, all the borders, and all the exhausting seriousness of the world are ultimately just a fleeting comedic play. It is incredibly relaxing to look at. It grants us full permission to simply let go of the heavy weight of the world, reminding us that we do not need to carry the burden of understanding everything, because it is all just a quiet, passing shadow. Letting go of that heavy, worldly burden completely, we become as light as air, floating effortlessly upward, away from the painted jester, away from the earth, and rising toward the cool, glowing silver surface of the moon. In the year 1651, the Italian astronomer Giovanni Battista Riccioli spent countless quiet nights looking through a long brass telescope, meticulously mapping the lunar surface. He drew the bright, jagged highlands and the dark, perfectly smooth, sweeping plains. But the greatest gift Riccioli gave us was not his drawing, it was his poetry. He had to name these vast, dark, empty spaces, and he chose not to name them after violent earthly kings or bloody battles. He mapped the moon using the quietest, most peaceful states of the human mind. He dipped his quill and wrote the names we still use to this very day: the Sea of Serenity, the Sea of Showers, the Bay of Dew, and most beautifully resting quietly near the equator, Mare Tranquillitatis, the Sea of Tranquility. We leave the loud, chaotic and exhausting history of the earth far behind us now, gently touching down onto that perfect, silent silver dust. The Sea of Tranquility is completely still. There is no wind to stir the surface, no water to crash against the shore, and no sound of any kind to break the peace. It is a map made entirely of quiet rest, waiting patiently to hold you safely through the deepest hours of the night. As you stand quietly upon the silver dust of the Sea of Tranquility, looking back across the vast, dark velvet of space toward our own blue and white home, we find our final secret, the most profound and expansive map of all. In the late 20th century, scientists and artists worked together to create the pale blue dot, a map of our place in the universe that consists of only a single, tiny, shimmering pixel of light. But to truly understand the quietest wonder of cartography, we must look at the work of the Voyager team, who placed a golden phonograph record onto a spacecraft and sent it out into the infinite silence. This golden record is in essence a map made of pure vibration and hope. It does not show land or sea, it maps the very soul of the earth through the sounds of a mother's first kiss to her child, the rhythmic chirping of crickets in a summer field, the low melodic song of a humpback whale in the deep Atlantic, and the soft, steady pitter-patter of a gentle rain on a tin roof. This is the map of our common heartbeat. It is a factual record of the things that make life beautiful and worth remembering. It was designed to drift through the dark for billions of years, a quiet message in a bottle for anyone who might be listening in the deep silence of the stars. It reveals the most significant truth of our entire journey, that every map we've ever made, from the heavy Babylonian clay to the glowing silken scrolls and the vast marble walls, is simply a way of saying, we were here, we loved this world, and we found it beautiful. There is a profound, ultimate peace in realizing that you are part of that beautiful record. You are a living, breathing coordinate on a map of infinite wonder, a quiet point of light in a universe that is vast, ancient, and entirely at rest. The long journey through the history of the world is now softly, perfectly complete. The 101 wonders we have explored together are no longer facts to be remembered or details to be held. They have transformed into a gentle, warm mist, settling quietly around you like a protective blanket. You can let the ink and the parchment, the stone and the silver simply dissolve into the shadows of the room. There is nothing left to navigate. Every road has been travelled, every ocean has been crossed, and every hidden island has been safely found. You have arrived at the only destination that matters now, this exact moment of total, undisturbed stillness. Feel the incredible, heavy comfort of your body, supported so completely by the earth. Each breath is a slow, rhythmic wave, washing away the last lingering thoughts of the day, leaving behind only the clean, empty shore of a peaceful mind. The air in the room is cool and still. The dark is warm and welcoming. You are exactly where you belong, tucked safely into the center of a universe that is quiet, ordered, and profoundly safe. There is no need to listen any longer. There is no need to think. You have permission to simply let go, to sink deeper into the soft velvet silence, and to allow the great dark ocean of sleep to carry you away. The maps are all folded, the lamps are all dimmed, the world is resting, and you are resting with it, perfectly balanced in the quiet silver light of the night. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.